Chapter 39. Although that extremely pure light wave only flashed for a moment with a strong perception, he was able to detect it. He still remembered the direction in an instant. There were a total of 10 forks in front of him, and the direction he remembered was the third one from the left. Without further hesitation, Long Houchin stood up and strode towards the third fork in the road. Less than 100 meters into the fork, the feeling from before appeared again. That's right, it was this direction. Long Houchin thought to himself. A place with such a strong light elemental fluctuation should naturally be my destination. He continued forward for a while. When he turned a corner, suddenly, a strange door of light appeared in front of him. This door of light was different from the one he had teleported through. It was much smaller. It was about 2 meters tall. It was 1 meter wide and oval in shape. Inside the door of light, there was a faint golden halo, but the edges were aqua blue. Am I going to step into this door of light? Long Houchin stopped in his tracks, standing in front of the door of light. He immediately felt that the extremely pure light elemental fluctuation had come from this door of light. But it was not continuous, but randomly appearing from time to time. As the son of light, Long Houchin was born with a great affinity for light elemental fluctuations. Not only the light elemental fluctuations towards him, but he was also the same towards light elemental fluctuations. As long as he felt the presence of light elemental fluctuations, he would subconsciously rule out dangerous situations. After hesitating for a moment, Long Houchin took a deep breath and stepped into the door of light. This time, he did not feel any discomfort, only a soft halo around him. It was just a sway. He felt his feet on the ground again. The next moment, everything became real again. This was a cave, surrounded by irregular rocks. He stepped into this place. Long Houchin only felt that he had returned to the real world, and the next moment it became dreamy. 2 rays of light, one blue and one gold, suddenly lit up, illuminating the entire cave. The blue was like the vast sea, full of inclusiveness and the crystalline beauty of blue. The gold was like the morning sun, warm, bright, full of vitality but not dazzling. It was exuberant vitality, a light that drove away the darkness. Long Houchin's eyes instantly blurred. These 2 pure colors were so beautiful that he was immersed in them, especially that golden color. When he saw it, he felt as if he had returned to the moment when his father helped him complete the divine awakening. The liquid spiritual power in his body was also emitted on its own, causing his body to flicker. His entrance seemed to have startled the gold and blue lights that filled the entire cavern. The 2 lights paused at the same time, but the feeling they gave Long Houchin was completely different. The blue light was crystal and probing, while the golden light paused for a moment. He immediately felt a strong sense of intimacy. He suddenly pounced on Long Houchin. Long Houchin didn't do anything. He just stood there silently as the golden light enveloped his face. When his body was enveloped by the golden light, he felt his entire body become warm, and the spiritual power in his body suddenly increased in speed. It was an indescribable restraint. Although he couldn't see his surroundings clearly, only the golden light in front of him, the increasingly strong sense of intimacy filled Long Houchin's heart with satisfaction. He felt the truth of light, the endless pure light, and his entire body was immersed. Vaguely, Long Houchin's body became gradually transparent under the cover of the golden light. He let the golden light pass through his body, circling around him. If someone saw this scene, they would definitely cry out in shock. The body of light was a powerful symbolic ability of the Knight of the 7th step. It could transform into light and merge with light. At this time, Long Houchin was only at the 5th step, and he had just stepped into the 5th step. But he did it, even if it was a complete version of the body of light. He couldn't let external light easily pass through his body, but he did it. This was the constitution of the Son of Light. He had an affinity with light, which gave him absolute trust in all light elements. and the light elements also treated him as the ruler of light, the child of the god of light, kind, gentle, and full of endless intimacy. After an unknown amount of time, the golden light quietly retreated. Long Houchin's body also returned to normal, but at this time he suddenly felt a sense of danger. Suddenly opening his eyes, Long Houchin saw a blue figure. Seeing this figure, he couldn't help but be shocked, because this blue figure looked exactly like him, but its body was transparent blue. A strong pressure suddenly came from the body that seemed to be formed by the blue light. The next moment, he raised his arms. Two blue heavy swords extended from his hands. Attack! At this moment, Long Houchin didn't even have any weapons on him, and he had just woken up from the wonderful feeling. He instinctively activated the spirit light bracer on his wrist. A layer of holy light rose up, and the pale golden light blocked the blue light's attack. Poof! The huge impact caused Long Houchin to retreat in an instant. The two blue heavy swords simultaneously activated lightning stab, like rain falling on a banana leaf, hitting the holy light barrier. In just a second, the holy light barrier shattered, and the blue light rushed up, heading straight for Long Houchin. With this short buffer, Long Houchin was able to react. His hands also separated from his body, and two slightly slender golden long swords appeared in his hands. Spiritual weapon condensation. This was a weapon that was formed from spiritual energy. Although he didn't know what was attacking him, he could clearly feel that he was facing himself at this moment. In this situation, how could he resist without a weapon? Spiritual weapon condensation referred to the condensation of spiritual energy into a weapon, which could only be done after reaching the 5th rank. Long Houchin was currently only an Earth Knight level 1, so it was very difficult for him to use it. Moreover, spiritual weapon condensation consumed a lot of spiritual energy, so he wouldn't use it unless he had no other choice. With his son of light constitution, condensing these two thin swords directly consumed more than 500 points of inner spiritual energy. And during the process of battle, his spiritual energy would continue to be consumed. Facing the blue light's lightning stab, the thin swords in Long Houchin's hands also moved. The golden light flashed, and he actually used his sword to break the sword. Without using any skills, he blocked all of the blue light's attacks. The blue light seemed to only know how to attack like lightning stab, and its speed suddenly increased. Thousands of blue sword shadows attacked, like quicksilver. At this moment, Long Houchin felt like he had returned to the owl ant's cave. The two swords in his hands flew up and down, but his mind was still calm. No matter how fast the opponent's attacks were, he blocked them one by one. Long Houchin found that the opponent's attacks weren't very strong, and he could easily block them with spiritual weapon condensation. But even though Long Houchin didn't use any skills, his own spiritual energy was still being consumed quickly. According to the situation, it didn't seem to be advantageous. At this moment, Long Houchin suddenly found something strange. His perceptive sense was much higher than ordinary people, and while blocking the blue light storm-like attacks, he also had the ability to observe the opponent. He found that the blue light's color seemed to have dimmed a lot. With each attack, its body would also become dimmer. During this period of time in the Monster Hunter selection tournament, Long Houchin had also experienced a lot of matches, some wins and some losses. Especially when facing a strong opponent, it was extremely important for him to increase his combat experience. Long Houchin realized that in battle, not only did he have to pay attention to his own situation, but he also had to pay attention to the enemy's situation. It wasn't to observe the enemy's attack skills, but to observe the enemy's body and the strength of their spiritual energy. He was gradually developing this habit of observation. When the blue light first used lightning stab, it was clearly the most powerful, but when it broke through his holy light shroud, its attack power seemed to have decreased a lot. The holy light shroud obviously couldn't hurt the opponent, So why did its attack power suddenly decrease? And what about his own situation at that time? Thinking about it this way, Long Houchin realized the mystery behind it. The blue light's spiritual energy strength seemed to be about the same as his own, and his spiritual energy decreased. As a result, its spiritual power would decline. When he used spiritual weapon condensation, his spiritual energy was greatly depleted. So its spiritual energy was also reduced, and its attack power was naturally affected. It was the same now. If that's the case, I just need to focus on defense. Just as Long Houchin was thinking, suddenly, the blue light's figure paused for a moment. Its body soared into the air and spun rapidly. It was the fighting, slaying, revolving sword. It copied my skill? Long Houchin was shocked. He himself knew the fighting, slaying, revolving sword, so he naturally knew how powerful this skill was when it was used. However, at this moment, Long Houchin smiled. As he quickly retreated, he quickly chanted an incantation and raised the golden swords in both hands. At this moment, his powerful spiritual energy suddenly erupted, and he split his attention into 3 parts. The light sword in his left hand rippled with 3 halos: Faith Halo, Guardian Blessing, and True Shot Halo. The light sword in his right hand lit up with a dense white light. A dense white light lit up. It was the holy sword accumulating power. When his cultivation was at the 5th rank, he could use the holy sword again. He no longer needed to chant an incantation, and only needed to go through the process of accumulating spiritual energy. At the same time, the holy light shroud on his spiritual light shroud was released, blocking the blue figure's first attack. As he retreated, Long Houchin's incantation was completed. Angel's Blessing. Then, a loud dragon's roar resounded around Long Houchin's body. Under the dense golden light, the spiritual energy around his body turned into scales, and he held the swords in both hands. It was the Rising Dragon Strike. Rising Dragon Strike was an attack skill that both the Guardian Knight and the Punishment Knight could learn. When Long Houchin's cultivation reached the 5th rank, he naturally learned it from his father's inheritance ring. However, when he used this attack, the holy sword in his right hand was not completed. Puff! The 2 sides collided in the air, but in an instant, the blue figure had already collapsed, turning into countless blue specks of light that scattered in all directions. Bang! Long Houchin's feet landed on the ground. His upper body swayed slightly and his vision darkened. In that short period of time, he had used so many skills that even his extraordinary spiritual energy could not support it, and his face was pale. At this moment, the 2 swords in his hands had already dispersed. From start to finish, the holy sword skill in his right hand had not been completed. However, he won. He defeated the blue figure just like that. For the night, it was very easy for Long Houchin to do this. The reason why he was able to win was because he had correctly judged the blue figure. The blue figure copied his skills and spiritual energy intensity. The skills did not change, but the spiritual energy intensity was adjusted according to his body. Under such circumstances, as Long Houchin continued to resist, the blue figure's attack would never stop. If he was not careful, he would be taken advantage of. However, what if he ran out of spiritual energy? What else could the blue figure use to attack? Long Houchin had used so many skills in a row not to defeat his opponent, but to exhaust his remaining spiritual energy as quickly as possible. Especially when he was about to exhaust his spiritual energy, he used his final skill. Without spiritual energy to support it, the battle-slaying revolving sword naturally could not withstand the impact of the Rising Dragon Strike, so the blue figure dissipated. All of this seemed simple, but in reality, it was a combination of wisdom and strength. If Long Houchin had not blocked the blue figure's storm-like attack and not been injured, if he had not made a correct judgment and made a prompt decision, it was hard to say who would win this battle. Although the blue figure did not have any real killing intent, Long Houchin could vaguely feel that if he lost, he would probably lose something. Everything returned to darkness. All the light disappeared. In the darkness, only Long Houchen's light breathing could be heard. Suddenly, right in front of Long Houchen, a flash of light shone. Under the illumination of that light, everything around him became clear. A cave! It was still a cave, but it was a lot smaller than when he first saw it. In front of Long Houchen, there was a small circular platform. That light came from the center of the platform. It was a sword floating on the platform. The blade was facing down, the hilt was above. Compared to the traditional knight heavy sword, this sword was a bit smaller. The blade was about 3 feet 6 inches long. From the edge to the hilt, the total length was about 1 foot 2 inches. In total, it was 4 feet 8 inches. The blade was golden, but it was a reserved golden color. There were many fine inscriptions on the sword's spine. These inscriptions combined to form a strange hibiscus flower shape, all the way to the edge of the sword. The color of the edge changed. It was no longer golden, but a deep blue. The edge was wide and thick, carved into the shape of a dragon's head. The golden blade looked like it was spat out from the dragon's mouth, and the hilt that extended downwards was the dragon's body. Although the size of the dragon's body and the dragon's head were somewhat disproportionate, there was a strange sense of harmony. The deep blue sword's hilt rippled with a gentle blue halo. In the middle of the edge, where the dragon's eye should be, there was an oval golden gem that was slightly bigger than a gold coin inlaid on each side. The dragon's tail, which was closed at the end of the sword's hilt, had 3-inch-long forks which looked very sharp. Where the forks converged, there was an aqua blue gem on each side. Seeing this sword, Long Houchen's eyes almost instantly widened. Ever since he became a knight, he had seen many weapons and equipment, especially the heavy sword that he used the most. Naturally, he paid the most attention to it. However, he had never seen a sword that could be forged as dazzling as the one in front of him. More importantly, he seemed to be able to feel that this sword was breathing, as if it had a life of its own. As soon as he stepped in, he felt the aura of the golden and blue light appear again. But this time it was much gentler, especially the golden halo that rippled on the blade. It attracted Long Houchen step by step towards it. It was too beautiful. It was truly too beautiful. It was flawless. When Long Houchen's consciousness was slightly clearer, he was surprised to find that he had already stepped on the platform, standing right in front of the sword. He forcefully swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Is this the prize that Knights Templars gave me for the preliminary round? Even just by looking at it, he could feel how precious this sword was. He carefully raised his right hand and slowly held the hilt that was just inches away from him. In an instant, Long Houchen felt a strong suction force firmly pulling his palm, followed by a sharp pain coming from the center of his palm. Although he was shocked, Long Houchen did not try to let go of his palm, because he could clearly feel that the aura from this sword was telling him that it would not hurt him. Drops of blood flowed down Long Houchen's palm, into the hilt, and into the golden gem on the edge of the sword. The blood flowed upwards, soaking through the dragon's body, all the way to the blue gem on the dragon's tail. A violent tremor appeared in the next instant, and the long sword in his hand suddenly emitted thousands of rays of light. Long Houchen almost instinctively raised the long sword above his head. Golden light filled the sky, blue light coiled, and turned into a huge pillar of light that shot straight to the top of the cave. A strong spiritual fluctuation exploded in an instant. A cool and warm air instantly entered his palm, and in an instant the pain in Long Houchen's palm disappeared. At the same time, 6 words slowly appeared in his mind in sequence. Blue rain, hibiscus of light. This was its name. Outside spirited Mount Valley, Yang Houhen had been quietly standing in the same place, looking in the direction of the valley. At this moment, there was one more person beside him. It was the Holy Knight of Knights Templars, Han Yen. Lord, do you think he can subdue that sword? So many years have passed, and countless people have tried, but they have all failed. This includes his father. Yang Houhen smiled slightly and said, I hope he succeeds. This sword, Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light, was passed down from the glorious era. It was originally 2 swords, but they were later fused into one by a divine smith. This sword has its own sword spirit and was sealed by the ancient elven royal family with a psionic storm. Anyone who gets close to it will be pulled into the seal for a test. Only those who pass the test have a chance of obtaining it. No one knows to what extent the power of this Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light can reach. According to the records left behind by the ancient elven royal family, they call this sword the Sword of Miracles. Ever since it was forged, it has never had a master, because no one has been able to gain the recognition of the 2 sword spirits. Therefore, the High Elven royal family sealed it here with a psionic storm, waiting for the fated one. It is said that the most amazing thing about this Sword of Miracles is that as long as it recognizes its master, it will only be used by that master. It is like a bloodline equipment. No matter how strong its master is, it will have corresponding strength. The 2 sword spirits will grow with the growth of their master. Have you ever heard of weapons and equipment that can grow? Moreover, it can grow on its own without the need for any embedding or inscription. This is something that even a divine artifact can't do. Han Q's eyes were full of surprise, as expected of the Sword of Miracles. If that's the case, if Houchin can get its approval, then this sword can continue to be used. Yang Haohen laughed. Don't ask me. No one has owned this sword, and there are no records of its use. Who can say for sure? Han Qian chuckled and said, Hall Master, you bled a lot this time. Yang Haohen smiled faintly and said, no one can use this sword anyway, so why not let him have a try? Xingyu, that old guy, even gave the sword of Samsara to the saint of Samsara. We, the Knights Templars, also have a son of light. It's just a Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light. Are we still not willing to take it out? We can't lose to them. I didn't expect Xingyu to have such a son, but I don't understand why he didn't send his son to the temple to train him when he found out that he has the constitution of the Son of Light. Han Q said, maybe it's for the heart's temperament. Yang Haohen was slightly stunned, but immediately understood. He said, you mean Xingyu wants this child to become stronger through training in the outside world. This way, he will have a stronger survival ability. Han Q smiled and nodded. He said, at least for now, in my eyes, this child is absolutely qualified to be a knight. It's rare to see someone at his age. Good talent also needs to appear in the right person. Only then can it blossom the most resplendent brilliance. Just as he said this, in the distance, in the Riding Spirit Valley, a bright light shot up into the sky. Gold and blue, the 2 colors blended. The gold light was in the center, and the blue light was outside. In an instant, the blue sky and white clouds in the sky dimmed. It really worked. Yang Haohen's eyes showed a hint of surprise. Han Q's mouth was wide open. That's too fast. This. Yang Haohen laughed heartily and said, I've already expected this. This child has the constitution of the Son of Light. Although Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light are dual attributes, they are mainly light. Will the light attribute attack him when it meets the constitution of the Son of Light? Don't worry, just wait. He still needs to go through a process of fusion. Han Q frowned and said, Sigh, now that I think about it, the other equipment I prepared for him is a little unpresentable. Yang Haohen looked at him meaningfully. He said, You just explained it to me. Why can't you understand it yourself? We can't spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. He has to rely on his own efforts to move forward step by step and finally surpass us. All right, is there any news from Xingyu? Han Q sighed and shook his head. Not yet. After his battle with a Nan was seriously injured and he disappeared. Yang Haohen nodded. He said, Tell the relevant people to treat this matter as top secret, especially not to tell this child Houchin. I don't want his temperament to be affected. In the letter Xingyu left me, he said that if he can't return after his battle with a Nan, I can't tell Houchin before he breaks through to the seventh demon god. Han Q sighed. He said, I really don't understand why Palace Master Long had to challenge the seventh demon god. He could have just not agreed to that challenge. Yang Haohin shook his head. He said no, he has to go. This is his responsibility. If you can break through to the ninth demon god in your lifetime, you will also know what this responsibility is. Continue to have people investigate Anand's injuries. Yes. Han Q nodded in response. Yang Haohin sighed inwardly. Xingyu. Oh, Xingyu, why didn't you tell us in the letter that this little Houchin has the constitution of the Son of Light? Could it be to give us a surprise? Don't worry, no matter what happens to you. I will help you look after your son. I will help him become the next you. No, he will even surpass you. The Son of Light. Perhaps he has the possibility of sitting on the first throne of God. Bathed in the golden infiltration and blue nourishment, Long Houchin gradually entered a strange state. He vaguely felt that there was something extra in his body. His entire body felt like it was soaking in warm spring water. It was indescribably comfortable. After an unknown period of time, Long Houchin gradually woke up. He was surprised to find that he was standing at the entrance of the spirited Mount Valley. Not far in front of him was the rippling golden fog. Long Houchin subconsciously looked at his right hand. However, his right hand was empty. However, his arm was still in a raised position. Where's the sword? Where's my blue rain and hibiscus of light? Long Houchin immediately looked around anxiously. He didn't find the sword, but he saw a person. Yang Haohin looked at him with a smile. Don't look for it. It's in your body. In my body. Long Houchin looked at Yang Haohin in surprise. Grandfather Yang, what's going on? Yang Haohin smiled. This is a miraculous sword. In view of your outstanding performance in the preliminary round, we, the Knights Templars, decided to let you try and see if you can pass its test. You know the result yourself. You passed, so it's yours now. Long Houchin asked doubtfully, Then what do you mean by it entering my body? Yang Haohin smiled. Don't worry. I will tell you everything I know about blue rain and hibiscus of light. Even I don't know what kind of power this sword has. Since the day it was created, no one has ever used it. But according to the temple's research over the years, it's certain that it's a spiritual weapon. Long Houchin was surprised. Spiritual weapon? What's a spiritual weapon? Yang Haohin said, A spiritual weapon is a spiritual weapon. I believe you've been tested by it. That's right, it's the sword spirit's test for you. Although a sword spirit doesn't have true spiritual intelligence, it has its instincts. A weapon with a weapon spirit has unlimited possibilities. Blue rain and hibiscus of light have unlimited potential. But you should also know that the more powerful a weapon is, the more ability is needed to use it. But this sword doesn't need to be like that, because it will grow along with you. Right now, it should have already fused with your body. Its own ability will nourish your body, and your spirit force will nurture its continuous growth. Simply put, this is a weapon that can evolve. You can use your inner vision to look for it. Hearing this, Long Houchin hurriedly used his inner vision. Once he used his inner vision, he immediately discovered that a strange change had occurred within his body. The originally rotating Saint's spiritual stove and his own liquid spiritual power didn't have any changes. Moreover, the spiritual power that was exhausted during the test had already been completely restored. The strange thing was that above the Saint's spiritual stove floated a miniature sword. Looking at its appearance, wasn't it blue rain and hibiscus of light? Faint gold and blue rippled with a soft golden blue luster. Long Houchin used his inner vision to sense that blue rain and hibiscus of light were bathing in his liquid spiritual power. They seemed to be faintly absorbing his liquid spiritual power. The absorption rate wasn't large, but it was more like they were being nourished by the spiritual power. And the golden blue luster it emitted was slowly spreading, dispersing into every corner of his body. It stimulated his body to constantly produce a soft and warm feeling. This feeling was very slight, and if he didn't concentrate, he wouldn't be able to discover it. But he could vaguely feel that this light seemed to be strengthening his body. What life needs the most is light and water. For plants, as long as there is light and water, they can survive. Although humans have more needs, light and water are also what the human body needs the most. According to our many years of research and judgment, it should be helpful in strengthening your external spiritual power. But this requires a subtle process and can't be accomplished in one step. Yang Haohen's voice reached Long Haochen's ears, awakening him from his state of concentration. Opening his eyes, Long Haochen slowly raised his right hand. His mind connected with a miniature sword above the saint's spiritual stove. With a slight movement of his mind, a ray of light flashed, and the dragon-shaped sword hilt appeared in his hand. The golden blade seemed to have spat out from the dragon's mouth on the hilt of the sword, glittering with golden light. Compatibility. When blue rain and hibiscus of light appeared again, Long Haochen's first feeling was compatibility. It was completely different from the first time he held this sword. At this moment, he only felt that this sword was like a part of his body. Some strange and mysterious things were slowly appearing in his consciousness. It seemed that this sword was telling him something. Yang Haohen faintly smiled and said, "Go back and slowly experience it. Tomorrow, the finals of the top 16 will begin. This old man wishes you a good result in advance." "Tomorrow?" Long Haochen was startled. "Didn't you say that I can rest for 2 days after the end of the group stage?" Yang Haohen smiled and said, "Little guy, you've already been here for 3 days. Do you think it's that easy to fuse with a spiritual tool? You being able to complete it in 3 days already proves that your compatibility with it is quite astonishing. Your teacher's side has already been notified by someone from the temple, so there's no need to worry." "It's already been 3 days?" Long Haochen was surprised and hastily bid farewell to Yang Haohen. Under Yang Haohen's guidance, he once again stepped into the huge light door. A ray of light flashed through the wall. Long Haochen had already returned to the small hall of the Holy Alliance's Treasury Pavilion. The surroundings were empty and no one appeared. By then, Long Haochen had already understood that there was probably no need for any guards here. Without special means, it was impossible to enter the Treasury Pavilion. In fact, there were only a few people in any temple who were qualified to enter the Treasury Pavilion of the Holy Alliance and take care of the Holy Alliance's temple. When he walked out of the Treasury Pavilion, there were still 2 people guarding outside, but they weren't the fat and skinny old men from that day. Instead, they were 2 middle-aged men who looked harmless and were dressed in plain clothes. At most, they looked to be in their 40s. The 2 of them kindly smiled at Long Haochen. Were they really harmless? Long Haochen wanted to investigate their situation carefully, but he was shocked to find that the 2 middle-aged men gave him the feeling that they were actually quiet and distant, as if they didn't have any ability, yet they seemed to be as deep as the abyss. This was indeed the headquarters of the Holy Alliance. He really didn't know how many experts there were in this sacred city. After bowing to the 2 middle-aged men in a hurry, Long Haochen then walked quickly. "Master." Han Yu's voice sounded, and he greeted him from the side. "You have been waiting for me." Long Haochen looked at him in surprise. Han Yu nodded and said, "I am your retainer knight, so naturally I have to follow you." It was very obvious that he had already completely understood his position. Long Haochen smiled very brightly and didn't say anything else. He brought Han Yu back to the hotel. What made Long Haochen a little depressed was that regardless of whether it was his teacher or sister, they were all training in the room. Actually, he most wanted to ask Liexayan about how Kai Air was these few days, but it wasn't good to disturb their training. Helplessly, he could only return to his room and train himself. With regards to the hibiscus of light, he still had a lot to understand. Otherwise, how would he be able to bring out its power? Early morning. Yi Hua knocked on Long Haochen's door. Seeing his teacher again, Long Houchin got a shock. Because he discovered to his surprise that the gloominess on his teacher's face had actually completely disappeared, and instead he had a feeling of being in high spirits. It was as if in these few days he had actually become 10 years younger. "Teacher, you!" Yi Hua chuckled. The muscles on his face didn't seem to be that stiff anymore. I finally broke through to 3,000 spiritual energy level. In the past, I kept telling myself as if I was hypnotized that talent wasn't important. But these few days, for the first time, I experienced the importance of talent in training. After so many years of accumulation, I finally have the opportunity to make a breakthrough. Long Houchin, thank you. No. Long Houchin immediately felt a little embarrassed. "Teacher, this is what I should do. It's good that I was able to help you." Yi Hua smiled and said, "All right, there's no need to say those courteous words between us, teacher and disciple. These were given to you by your grandmaster. After the competition ends, your teacher will also stay in the sacred city to train with your grandmaster. And you will also have to join the monster hunters to train. These equipment will be very useful to you." Chapter 40. As he spoke, he took out something that looked like a bracelet and pointed at the ground beside Long Houchin. Suddenly, there was a flash of light, and several pieces of equipment appeared there. Without a doubt, this bracelet had a similar function to the forget-me-not ring. Although this kind of storage bracelet was rare, Han Qiu was the leader of the Knights Templars, the Holy Knight, so it was not surprising that he had it. Equipment. One would only know how to cherish it after losing it. Long Houchin had deeply experienced the helplessness of losing all his equipment before. As soon as he heard that there was equipment that could be used, his eyes immediately lit up, and he couldn't wait to look at the equipment. It was a full body armor, a sword, and a shield. These 3 pieces of equipment were all silver in color, and they exuded a faint aura of light. It felt like they should be of the same level as his previous armor and light sword. At most, they were slightly stronger. However, even so, it was already a great surprise for Long Houchin. After losing the shield and light sword, he did not stop asking about the price of magic equipment. Each of them cost thousands of gold coins, which made people flinch at the sight of it. To be able to gather a set, he was already very satisfied. Yi Hua smiled and said, "This set of equipment is called the Holy Spirit set. Holy Spirit armor, Holy Spirit shield, Holy Spirit sword. If taken out individually, they are all magic equipment, but the advantage is that it is a set. When combined together, it can produce the Holy Spirit halo. You can control your allies according to your thoughts. The radius of the halo reaches a diameter of 20 meters. It can form a layer of Holy Spirit armor on the surface of the body, and its defense is comparable to the Holy Light Barrier. Maintaining this halo requires 5 points of spiritual power. This is a very good Guardian Knight equipment, and it is very useful for the team. So, when combined, this set is equivalent to a spirit demon equipment. It is even better than the Holy Light bracelet that teacher gave you." "Great." Long Houchin squatted down excitedly. He first put the Holy Spirit sword and Holy Spirit shield into the forget-me-not ring, and then put on the Holy Spirit armor. A faint smile appeared on Yi Hua's face. This child really has a pure and kind nature. He didn't despise the fact that this was only a magic rank equipment given by a Holy Knight captain. The excitement in his eyes couldn't be faked. "Teacher, if you see the Grandmaster, you must thank him for me. I will definitely use this equipment to win glory for our Knights Templars." The Holy Spirit armor was not heavy, and it was indeed of better quality than his original armor. This Holy Spirit armor was not heavy, and it was indeed better than his original armor. This armor was not heavy, and it was indeed better than his original armor. Yi Hua patted his shoulder and said, "All right, go to the Sanctuary Alliance's trial field with your big sister, Exanair. From now on, it will be a knockout competition. Everyone only 1 chance, and everyone 1 chance. 1 chance. 1. Everyone 1 chance, 1 chance. Try to get into the top 3. I guarantee to complete the mission." Long Haochen thumped his chest with his right fist and performed a standard knight's salute to Yihua. After he said that, the teacher and disciple couldn't help but laugh. On the other side, Hao Yue, who was curled up on Long Haochen's bed, slowly raised his 3 heads and shook his body. His heavy body immediately made the bed creak. "I won't forget about you." Long Haochen laughed at him. After getting the new armor, Long Haochen was very excited. He even wore the armor for breakfast. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, under Yihua's gaze, he went to the Holy Alliance's great training field with Lin Exin. As for his squire, he didn't have the right to watch the battle. Long Haochen let Han Yu stay in the hotel to train. "Big sister, how is Kai these few days? She isn't angry at me, right?" Long Haochen asked Lin Exin. Lin Exin giggled and said, "Look at how careful you are. We haven't confirmed our relationship yet, and you are already so worried about her. She will definitely be a henpecked husband in the future." Long Haochen blushed and quickly explained, "Big sister, we are just ordinary friends." Lin Exin laughed and said, Okay. Ordinary friends, right? Then you can go and find out about her situation yourself." Long Haochen suddenly became a little anxious. He pulled Lin Exin's arm and said, "Big sister, I was wrong. Tell me quickly." Lin Exin rolled her eyes and said, "You've been exposed." Okay. Big sister promises that you will be able to see her today." No matter how long Haochen asked, Lin Exin refused to say when she would be able to see Kai. Not long after, the siblings arrived at the Holy Alliance's great training field. The top 16 finals would be held at the Knights' great training field. All the contestants who entered the top 60 could come and watch the battle. When the 2 arrived at the entrance, they met a familiar face. 2 men walked over from not far away and handed over their number plates at the entrance. They were Yang Wenjiao and Huang Yi. It seemed that the 2 of them knew each other long ago. "Brother Yang, Brother Huang, nice to meet you." Although they were competitors, they already knew each other. When Long Haochen and Lin Exin walked over, he took the initiative to greet them. When Yang Wenjiao saw him, his expression changed, and he said with a bitter face, "I'm not too good. I'm just hoping that I don't get you when it comes to drawing lots." With that, he hurried in, looking at him as if he had met a ghost. Long Haochen couldn't help but be a little stunned. What's wrong with him? Was this still the same expert who defeated him without a mount the other day? Could it be that he doesn't have the confidence to face me? Yang Wenjiao naturally wasn't afraid of him. If it was a head-on battle, he even had the confidence to fight Kai. However, the strongest aspect of an assassin was obviously not in a head-on battle. He really didn't want to be targeted by an assassin of Kai-er's level, especially since his grandfather didn't pursue the matter that day. One could imagine how shocking the assassin's background was. When Huang Yi saw that Long Haochen was much better, he smiled and greeted him. "Brother Huang, I didn't go to the competition that day. Between you and Wang Yuan, who advanced in the end?" Long Haochen asked curiously. Huang Yi said with a hint of pride, Lucky. Wang Yuan's strength was indeed very strong. In a head-on battle, I definitely wasn't her opponent, so I used a little trick. My elf companion and I joined hands to cast a spell. While she was installing the gems and activating the divine giant soul shield, we completed the earth wave spell. Speaking of which, it really wasn't very glorious. I used the earth wave spell to escape the entire competition. In the end, she exhausted all her spiritual power and barely won. I still have to thank you. If she didn't use the divine giant soul shield right from the start, I really don't know who would have won in a normal competition. Hearing him say this, Long Haochen understood that Huang Yi had used Wang Yuan's inertia. That girl's strength was indeed strong. Long Haochen also felt that it was a pity that she didn't enter the top 16. Shameless. Just as they were talking, an angry voice came from behind them. When the 2 turned around to look, wasn't it Wang Yuan? Beside her was Chun Ying or his complexion wasn't very good either. The little loli quickly walked in front of Long Houchin and waved her little fist at him. Are you looking down on me? You didn't even come to the last round. Long Houchin said helplessly, Of course not. I just happened to be busy that day. I apologize to you. Chuning stuck out her tongue at him. Before she could say anything, Wang Yuanyuan, who was so angry that she almost killed Huang Yi with her eyes, pulled him into the training field. Clearly, after the preliminaries, these two girls had formed a good friendship. Huang Yi looked at the divine soul shield on Wang Yuanyuan's back with lingering fear. He shook his head helplessly and said, I'm hoping that I won't be in the same group as this girl in the Monster Hunter's roulette. A shield warrior who doesn't know defense and is so impulsive. I'm really afraid of her. Lin Xian patted Long Houchin's shoulder and said, Let's go in. It's getting late. Wait for me, a hurried voice called out. When the siblings turned around, they met a familiar face. It was none other than the incomparably strange magician Lin Xian, who didn't know how to attack. Congratulations, congratulations. Congratulations on entering the top 16 at the same time. Lin Xian ran over with a face full of smiles. Lin Xian didn't have a good expression on her face. What's there to congratulate? We don't deserve your congratulations. Lin Xian paused and smiled apologetically. What's wrong, Sister Lin Xian? I didn't do anything. Lin Xian said angrily, You didn't do anything? You don't even know how to use a single offensive spell. Yet you tricked my brother into agreeing to let you enter the top 3. Don't you know how important a strong magician is to a team? When she said this, Huang Yi was the first to open his eyes wide. What? You don't know how to use offensive spells? He grabbed Lin Xian, and his expression was even uglier than Lin Xian's. Lin Xian slapped his hand away. So what if I don't know how to use offensive spells? I have medicine. At that time, he relied on his strong control over magic and bribed Huang Yi with medicinal pills to sit on the throne of the Magic Temple's preliminary competition. Now that Huang Yi heard that he didn't know how to use offensive spells, it would be strange if his expression was good. Long Houchin pulled Lin Xian, who still wanted to argue with Lin Xian, and said indifferently, Sister, don't be like this. If it wasn't for this, Lin Xian wouldn't have given me medicinal pills. His pills helped me a lot, so I should be thanking him. Brother Lin, don't worry. If I enter the top 3, I will definitely keep my promise. Then what about Kai Er? Lin Xian almost blurted out. Long Houchin was stunned. That's right. Kai Er and Kai Er also entered the top 60. In an instant, his face turned pale. If he entered the top 3, but could only choose Lin Xian, what about Kai Er? He remembered the promise he made not long ago, very clearly. I promised to protect her for life. Lin Xian looked at the somewhat absent-minded Long Houchin, and his heart sank. His face revealed a slightly helpless, bitter smile. He lightly shook his head, but didn't say anything. He patted Long Houchin's shoulder and walked in, thinking that although the girl was strong, she couldn't see. He felt that he couldn't say anything. Lin Xian also saw that Long Houchin didn't look good, so she quickly comforted him. Now is not the time to think about this. You have to think about it if you can really enter the top 3. Long Houchin felt slightly relieved. He nodded and said, Let's go in first. Today, the knight's trial field was obviously much more grand. Although the situation in the field had not changed, the rostrum was crowded, and it was obvious that there were many people. Without a doubt, they were all the higher-ups of the temple. At this time, more than 40 people from the top 60 of this year's Monster Hunters trial had arrived. They were all sitting in the resting area, and the top 16 participants for today's knockout competition were sitting in the front. Although the others didn't need to participate, they still came to watch the competition. One reason was that they hoped to learn the fighting methods and experience of the top 16 participants through watching the competition. At the same time, more importantly, when the knockout competition was over, it would be the roulette competition. Who didn't want to know more about the abilities of the potential future team leader? As soon as Long Hao-Chen entered the resting area, he quickly looked around. Many people's eyes fell on him, especially the knight and the previous participants of the third group. Found it. Long Hao-Chen completely ignored the other people's eyes, and soon he found his target. Kai sat quietly in the corner of the edge of the first row, with the green bamboo stick erected in front of her and leaning on her shoulder. She looked very quiet. In Long Hao-Chen's eyes, it was a feeling of purity and beauty, because when he obtained blue rain and hibiscus of light, Long Hao-Chen was completely immersed in them, and didn't feel that he hadn't seen Kai for a long time. Seeing that she was sitting there, he hurried to walk over with Lin Xan. The originally quiet Kai clearly recognized his footsteps. She slightly lowered her head and subconsciously tightened her hands on the green bamboo stick. Kai Long Hao-Chen called her and sat down next to her. Yes. Kai replied softly, and then she pursed her lips and refused to speak. Kai I went to the treasure pavilion of the Covenant Alliance these days, and I just came out last night. Kai also gave a sound of agreement. Kai what happened to you that day? Long Hao-Chen asked the question in his heart. This time Kai didn't even respond with an N. She just sat there quietly, but the tips of her ears were already red. Although Long Hao-Chen didn't show up for a few days, Lin Xian had already told Kai what he was going to do, so Kai naturally wasn't in a hurry. However, every time she thought of being hugged by Long Hao-Chen that day and her own misunderstanding, she would blush and her heart would race. Now that she heard Long Hao-Chen's voice again, how could she not be shy? Long Hao-Chen didn't know what was on the little girl's mind. He frowned and said, Kai, why are you angry? I didn't do anything. If you are angry, tell me why, okay? I can change. Lin Xian couldn't help but cover her mouth and chuckle. This young couple was really interesting. Looking at Kai, she was obviously shy and not angry. Who knows what the two of them did that day? However, feeling the pure affection between them, Lin Xian was more or less envious. She thought to herself, when would there be someone who would care for her like how her younger brother cared for Kai? Long Hao-Chen didn't worry for too long. Just when he was scratching his head, a soft little hand quietly reached over and held his hand. Holding the soft and tender little hand in his palm, Long Hao-Chen was stunned for a moment. Following that, his heart calmed down. His anxiety was gone and he sat there happily. Even if he was ignorant about relationships, he knew that Kai didn't blame him. In this important elimination round, naturally no one would be late. In a short while, all 60 participants had arrived. Sitting in the first row, Long Hao-Chen didn't know many people. Other than him, Lin Xian and Kai. There were only Huang Yi and Yang Wenjiao. There were also 2 Knight Templars that he hadn't fought before. Those 2 were naturally the 5th Order powerhouses from the preliminary round. Long Hao-Chen observed for a moment. There were exactly 16 people sitting in the first row. Among them, the Knights Templars occupied 5 seats, while the Temple of the Priests didn't have a single one. It was obvious that the Knight Templars were ranked first among the 6 temples for a reason. Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong. He turned his head to look at Kai, and asked, Kai, the first row seems to be for those who are participating in today's elimination round. You, Lin Xian finally couldn't help but laugh. Silly boy, sometimes you're really stupid. Who said that Kai, can't participate in the elimination round? She's the first in our second group. Long Hao-Chen's eyes widened in shock. He almost let go of that soft little hand. Kai raised her head slightly and said softly, You didn't ask me. I'm an assassin. This news was absolutely shocking to Long Hao-Chen. Naturally, he knew that Kai was an assassin, but she couldn't see. Even though she couldn't see, She was able to get the first place in the second group. What did this mean? Long Houchin was at a loss. Everyone, welcome to the night training field. At this moment, a familiar voice came from the training field. When Long Houchin looked up, he saw that the Holy Knight of the Knights Templars, Han Q, had arrived at the training field and was talking to the resting area. Although he didn't use any amplifying magic tools, everyone could hear his voice clearly. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the contestants who made it to the top 16. Entering the top 16 means that you will receive a reward from the Alliance. After the competition, you can choose a secret technique that suits you the most from the Sanctuary Alliance's treasure vault. Every time you pass an elimination round, the reward will increase accordingly. As for the other contestants who didn't make it to the top 16, don't be discouraged. Passing the preliminary round and entering the top 60 has already proved your excellence. You will also become an indispensable part of the monster hunters in the future. The Temple League has never been about formality, so I won't say much. Now, the top 16 contestants will enter the field and draw lots. From this moment onwards, luck will be an important factor in whether you can continue to advance. And I always believe that luck is a part of strength. Kai quietly withdrew her hand and stood up with the support of the green bamboo cane. Long Houchin knew that she was shy in front of so many people and didn't want him to hold her hand. Naturally, he didn't say anything. The 16 contestants sitting in the first row filed in and walked into the trial field. Although the other 44 contestants didn't need to participate in the following individual competition, they were equally nervous. Without a doubt, every elimination round would be a showdown between the strong, and the competition would definitely be extremely exciting. It was also related to the roulette team that would be formed soon. They all wanted to see who would be able to defeat the crowd and become the one standing at the top. After the staff checked the contestant number again to confirm their identity, the 16 people entered the trial field and stood in a circle around Han Q. At this moment, another 5 old men walked into the field and stood beside Han Q. Among these 5 old men was the Hall Master of the Assassin Temple's Chivalry Hall and the Deputy Hall Master Ing Sui Feng, who controlled the most powerful 36 chivalrous assassins in the Temple of Assassins. Deputy Hall Master of the Magic Temple, Sacred Mage Tutor, leader of the Magician Group, Lin Chin. Of course, Long Houchin didn't know that this old man was Lin Xian's grandfather. Deputy Hall Master of the Temple of the Priests, Cardinal Bishop, Temple Master of the Temple of Sacrifice, Ruo Shui, Deputy Hall Master of the Warrior Temple, Hall Master of the Berserk Hall, Combat Emperor Rancor. Let me be crazy. The last person was an old woman dressed in a black robe embroidered with golden runes. Compared to Ruo Shui's gentleness, she seemed a little domineering, and her eyes were clear. She wasn't tall, but after entering the trial field, she was the one who brought the most pressure to everyone. If one felt it carefully, it was actually a terrifying pressure that was close to that of a prehistoric giant beast. This was the Deputy Hall Master of the Soul Temple, Hall Master of the Spirit Fantasy Hall, Spirit Emperor Summoner San Shui. Just as everyone felt, perhaps this San Shui Popo's cultivation was not the strongest among the 6 Deputy Hall Masters, but she was definitely the most terrifying one among the 6. Han Q smiled and said, "Everyone, shall we begin?" The other 5 nodded in agreement. Although there were 6 of them here, the other 5 were only there to supervise, and the drawing of lots was presided over by Han Q alone. The ball of light that everyone had seen many times appeared once again, and slowly descended from the sky. The ball of light expanded in the sky, and gradually turned into a huge golden halo. When it landed on the ground, it just happened to separate the 16 participants and the 6 Deputy Temple Masters. The Deputy Hall Masters were inside the halo, while the 16 participants were outside. A golden light flashed in Han Q's hand, and instantly the entire halo shone brightly. Place one of your hands on the halo. The drawing of lots is about to begin. You can be at ease. The first place of the group will be drawn together with the second place of the other groups. Following Han Q's instructions, everyone placed their hands on the halo. The other 5 Deputy Hall Masters in the circle slowly closed their eyes and used their enormous mental power to feel the drawing of lots. The most nervous one was actually Han Q. As the Deputy Hall Master of the Knights Templars, he naturally hoped that the participants of the temple could advance further. This time, the Knights Templars had an unprecedented 5 participants in the top 16. In front of the other temple members, Han Q definitely had a lot of face. If all 5 of them could enter the top 8, how wonderful would that be? The drawing of lots began. A gentle golden light flashed rapidly after all 16 hands landed on the halo. It rotated at a high speed and instantly dyed the 16 participants' bodies gold. Gradually, rays of light shone one after another, and the gold color on every participant's body began to change. The main change was in the intensity of the gold color. Buzz, the halo's light faded, and the 16 participants, including Long Houchin, looked at the light on their bodies. The 5 Deputy Hall Masters in the halo opened their eyes at the same time. Other than Ruo Shui, the other 4 Deputy Hall Masters had a gloating look in their eyes. However, Han Q's expression became extremely ugly. The facts had proven that even without the supervision of the 5 Deputy Hall Masters, no one would question the fairness of the drawing of lots this time. The 5 participants of the Knights Templars had actually gathered into 2.5 pairs. That was to say, no matter what the results of this round were, the Knights Templars would at most have 3 participants in the top 8. The 2 unfamiliar Tier 5 Knight had drawn 1 pair, and the intensity of their light was exactly the same. As for the other pair, it was the siblings Long Houchin and Lin Xan. Long Houchin's expression instantly changed to one of shock, and he looked at Lin Xan with an ugly expression. He had never imagined that he would still be able to maintain such a speechless luck. A 1 in 8 chance, and he had actually drawn his sister. The holy Magus Lin Chin coughed and patted Han Q's shoulder, saying, "Brother Han is indeed the envoy of light. The drawing of lots this time is fair and just, and our magic temple has acknowledged it." Ing Sui Feng was the most familiar with Han Q, and he laughed without a care for his image. "Old Han, your Knights Templars are indeed very strong, but your luck, tisk. Han Q's face turned green, and he glared at him fiercely. The Battle Emperor Ren Wuquang laughed heartily and said, "Shadow, don't say that. The result of the drawing of lots is still very beneficial to the Knights Templars, and they have at least 2 of the top 8 spots. Doesn't that increase their chances of advancing to the top 3? The Spirit Emperor Summoner, Sen Shui, snorted coldly. "You fellows, what else can you do besides gloat? If you have the ability, get 5 of your people into the top 16 as well." "Thanks, Old Han. Our Soul Temple is indeed lucky that they didn't overlap." Other than the Knights Templars, the Soul Temple was in the limelight this time round. Other than Channing, who didn't even know what she would summon but could use the Living Soul Gate, there were actually 3 other outstanding summoners who advanced to the top 16. Furthermore, 2 of them were rank 4. It could be seen how powerful summoners were. In the drawing of lots just now, these 3 summoners would be facing opponents from other temple, and it was no wonder that the cold-faced Spirit Emperor Sen Shui was in a good mood. Han Q's heart was bleeding. The elimination round hadn't even started, and the Knights Templars were already down 2 people. However, he couldn't lose his temper in front of so many juniors, and his face alternated between red and white. "Look at all of you. All of you are so smug. Look at how calm Ruo Shui is." Ruo Shui sighed helplessly and said, "I have no choice but to be calm. None of our Temple of the Priestess people entered the top 16. The result of this drawing has nothing to do with me." Han Q was suddenly speechless and said fiercely, "Go back to the resting area and start the competition according to the color of the golden light on your body, from light to dark." the first group stay in the arena. After saying this, he walked towards the rostrum angrily without looking back. The huge golden halo also rose slowly and disappeared into the dome. Sister, Long Houchin wanted to say something to Lin Xan. Lin Xan shook her head at him with a smile and said, "Silly brother, what are you doing? What's there to be embarrassed about? Do you think I can continue to advance if I meet someone else? I can enter the top 16, thanks to Kai Er's help. I'm already very satisfied. I didn't even think I could enter the top 60. Meeting you in the drawing of lots is actually the best for me. Since I'm going to lose anyway, isn't it the best situation to send you into the top 8? But Long Houchin still wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Lin Xian again. Idiot, what but is there? Do you think I can beat you when I'm a grade 4? Or do you think my Rose can beat that little monster Haoyue? It has also evolved. Most of the other contestants had already walked towards the resting area, but Kai was still waiting beside Long Houchin, listening to the conversation between the siblings. You guys aren't in the first group, right? A somewhat helpless voice sounded from the side. Long Houchin and Lin Xian turned their heads and saw Yang Wenjiao and another female summoner looking at them strangely. And the golden light on these two was the lightest. The female summoner's magic robe was covered with a cloak, and her head was slightly lowered, so her face could not be seen clearly. Oh, sorry. Long Houchin nodded to him and hurriedly returned to the resting area with Lin Xian and Kai. Unbeknownst to them, Yang Wenjiao was also relieved. At least, he didn't draw either Long Houchin or Kai. Even without the psychological trauma from before, these two opponents were the most difficult to deal with. Kai, who is your opponent? Lin Xian asked Kai, who was beside Long Houchin. Kai shook her head and said, I can't see the color, so I don't know. Hearing her words, Long Houchin suddenly felt a strong sense of self-blame. He was so focused on himself and Lin Xian that he forgot that Kai couldn't see. He held her little hand apologetically. Don't worry, I'll go ask the staff. Just as Long Houchin went to ask the staff, the first round of the round of 16 began. Yang Wenjiao still didn't summon his mount. He brandished his dual swords and rushed towards the summoner opposite him like lightning. In a match between a knight and a summoner, both sides had to maintain a distance of 50 meters. The summoner opposite Yang Wenjiao held a green staff in his hand and quickly chanted an incantation. At the same time, he didn't stop and quickly retreated. Yang Wenjiao's charging speed was quite fast, but even so, the female summoner opposite him had already completed his first summon when he had just rushed 20 meters away. A green light floated from the front of the staff, and the moment it landed, a circle of green light rippled. Suddenly, thick vines drilled out of the ground and spread in an instant. This was a plant summoner. At this moment, if Yang Wenjiao didn't want to go head-on with these vines, he had to take a detour. Naturally, Yang Wenjiao wouldn't choose to do so. He rushed forward without hesitation. A brilliant golden light appeared on the two heavy swords. His footsteps quickened again, and he changed from charging to attacking. The two swords in his hands danced, and two light slashing swords swept out at the same time, flying close to the ground. Although the vines were tough, they were still fragile in front of the light slashing swords. Several vines were instantly cut apart. Yang Wenjiao's strength was undoubtedly shown at this moment. He brazenly rushed into the group of vines. He didn't use any other skills. The dual swords were impenetrable, and any vines that rushed into his swords would be instantly minced. His speed was only slightly reduced, but he was still able to pass through the vines like a hot knife through butter. At this time, the female summoner opposite him had already completed her second summoning spell. Faced with Yang Wenjiao's charge, the summoner didn't panic. This time, a dark green light rippled out. Suddenly, a large patch of thorns emerged from the ground. Not only did it block Yang Wenjiao's path, but it also hid his figure within it. A clanging sound exploded in an instant. Yang Wenjiao's forward-charging figure was actually blocked. These dark green thorns, which looked much thinner than the vines, were actually as hard as iron. Although they still couldn't contend against Yang Wenjiao's dual swords, they made it so that he could no longer advance at the speed of an attack. He could only advance step by step. At this time, Long Haochen had already asked the staff. He confirmed that Kai, or his opponent, was another summoner. He was also attracted by the battle in the arena. As for summoners, Long Haochen was the least familiar with them. The only summoner he had seen in a battle was Channing, Er's living soul gate. The summoner fighting against Yang Wenjiao was obviously more reliable than Channing Er. The speed at which she released 2 summoning spells in a row was actually this fast. Dang! Right at this moment, Yang Wenjiao's feet suddenly came to a stop, and a violent sound of impact rang out. His body also swayed, and he actually stopped. Long Haochen's eyesight was still quite good. He clearly saw that a red thorn more than a foot long bounced up from Yang Wenjiao's sword. That was obviously the attack that had just sneaked up on him. Because the resting area was above, Long Haochen could see that the summoner was still in the midst of the thorns. He didn't use the protection of the thorns to retreat. Beside him, there was a strange plant that was as tall as a person and needed a person to wrap their arms around it. This plant was covered in thorns, and there was a big red flower at the top. The red thorn just now was thrown out from its body. Long Haochen was very clear about Yang Wenjiao's strength. A thorn was able to push him back, so one could imagine the strength of its attack. Long Haochen focused and watched carefully. He could see that the strange plant's whole body trembled violently. Then the dark red thorns on its body quickly condensed and actually gathered together. Then it turned into a thorn more than a foot long and shot out explosively, targeting Yang Wenjiao. Good heavens! Plant summoning could actually be used like this? This was an eye-opener for Long Haochen. Dang! There was another violent collision. At the same time that it blocked Yang Wenjiao's body, the surrounding iron thorns also surrounded Yang Wenjiao at an astonishing speed from all directions. From the looks of it, this summoner actually had the upper hand. The female summoner's incantation did not stop. In front of her, pod-like plants gradually grew. The pods were very large, even larger than the previous plant with thorns on its top. It was unknown how they locked onto Yang Wenjiao, but they slowly bent down until they were parallel to the ground. Suddenly, they swung up. From each pod, 3 green beans the size of a human head were thrown out. They were actually thrown at Yang Wenjiao like catapults. Chapter 41. This works too. There were a total of 4 of these pod-like plants. This time, 12 green beans were smashed out. Moreover, a yellow plant quickly grew out of the female summoner's body. This thing was a little strange and looked like coral. The moment it grew, waves of yellow mist permeated the air. This mist didn't have any direct attack power, but any plant that came into contact with it grew crazily as if it had taken stimulants and attacked crazily. Poof, 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 poof. A series of strange sounds rang out. Yang Wenjiao naturally wouldn't be hit by those beans. However, juice splattered out from every bean that he pierced. His defense wasn't impervious to water after all, and his body was instantly stained quite a bit. This green liquid carried the fragrance of plants. It wasn't poisonous, but it was extremely sticky. After coming into contact with some of it, Yang Wenjiao instantly felt his movements become much slower. In almost all the previous matches, it was only Yang Wenjiao who suppressed others. When had he ever been suppressed by others? Not only was this feeling foreign to him, but it was also extremely unpleasant. On the rostrum, Han Qiu looked at Spirit Emperor Sanshui, who was sitting not far away from him. He said in surprise, "This lady isn't bad. Her summoning speed is actually so fast. The magic staff in her hand shouldn't be an ordinary item." Sanshui snorted and said, "Don't find excuses after losing. Xiao Emo has a strong natural affinity with plants. It's said that she has some elf blood in her. No matter how good a magic staff is, it depends on the person using it. Lose? I'm afraid that's going to be very difficult. Han Q smiled and shook his head. Although this girl isn't bad, it's impossible for her to win this match. Wen Zhao is the best candidate for our Knights Templars to fight for first place. Holy Magus Linchin, who was sitting beside San Shui, suddenly poked his head out and said, I remember that not long ago there was a contestant from your Knights Templars who was seriously injured by an assassination attempt. It can't be him, right? San Shui instantly smiled. She smiled very happily. Han Q said with a face full of embarrassment and anger, Little Lin, you want to slap my face? Fine, just you wait. Lin Chen laughed heartily and said, I'm so scared. Ing Suifeng sat at the side and said indifferently, even if Yang Wenjiao was injured, it was because of our assassin temple. What's there to laugh about? I'm afraid we won't see anyone from your magic temple in the top for this year. The 6 temples had 3 melee fighters and 3 sorcery fighters. There was some competition between them. There were 3 melee fighters and 3 sorcery fighters. The contestants didn't expect these big shots to bicker. Yang Wenjiao, who was in the middle of the arena, exploded. The plant summoner in front of him was much more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. The surrounding plants suddenly became crazy, and there were red spikes that would sneak up on him at any time. Coupled with the sticky green liquid on his body, Yang Wenjiao was a little enraged. An intense golden light instantly rose from Yang Wenjiao's body. At this moment, his internal spiritual energy was not only radiating outwards, but also in the shape of a flame. The blazing golden light exploded from his body. The green liquid that limited his speed disappeared in an instant. All the surrounding thorns that entered the range of the flames were burned to ashes. Fire of light? Long Haochen was shocked. This skill was recorded in the inheritance ring his father had left him. However, he hadn't practiced it yet. According to his father's notes, this skill required at least rank 5 level 2 or above to use. Light and fire were inseparable. The fire of sun was even more scorching. It was a pure flame of light. Its temperature was extremely high. Using one's own liquid spiritual energy as fuel, the fire of light had the ability to burn all darkness and corrode. It was very useful for the punishment knight. This skill was also a secret skill. Moreover, it was a must-learn skill for all rank 5 punishment knight. This skill was very powerful. It could attack, defend, and dispel negative effects. However, behind its great power, its consumption was also very high. Activating this skill required 200 liquid spiritual energy. Every breath of time consumed 30 spiritual energy. Even a rank 5 knight would not be able to use it for long. Without a doubt, fire was the most destructive to plants. Although the iron thorns were stimulated by the yellow mist, they could only wither in front of the fire of light. Yang Wenjiao let out a long roar. His toes touched the ground and he attacked again. The blazing flames of light incinerated all the plants that were close to him. The only thing he needed to do was to block the red spikes that were still hurtling towards him. Moreover, with the fire of light burning, the power of the thorns was greatly reduced. The female summoner hiding in the bushes panicked. Since she could accurately hit Yang Wenjiao's position, she could naturally feel the speed of his attack. She spat out a series of rapid incantations. She pointed the staff in her hand at the ground. Instantly, 2 cherry-like fiery red plants grew rapidly. Her body suddenly moved horizontally at a high speed. Upon closer inspection, one could see that there was an extra vine around her waist. The origin of the vine was from the side of the summoning spell that she had released earlier. At this moment, the vine pulled her body horizontally. The iron thorns naturally made way for her. Her speed was even faster than Yang Wenjiao's attack. The moment she moved horizontally, Yang Wenjiao had already arrived at her previous position. With a glance, he saw the plants that were still spraying thorns and the bean pods. "Where is she?" Yang Wenjiao was slightly stunned, but his hands did not slow down. His two heavy swords swept towards the plants in front of him with a blazing fire of light. Although the power of these plants was great, their defense was much weaker. It was like a hot knife cutting through butter. Yang Wenjiao's plan was very clear. His opponent was only a rank 4 summoner. Her spiritual energy was limited, and it was not liquid spiritual energy. As long as he destroyed as many of her summoned creatures as possible, she would also lose the ability to fight against him. Just as he was clearing away the attacking plants, 2 large red fruits appeared in his sight. These 2 red fruits had expanded to the size of pumpkins, and they were still expanding at an alarming rate. A sense of danger quietly crept over him. While Yang Wenjiao retreated rapidly, he swung his swords. The 2 light swords formed a cross and slashed towards the red fruits. Sigh, sometimes some people are just more infuriating. If it was Long Haochin, perhaps he would not have used these 2 swords. Because he had already sensed the danger, the best thing to do was to stay away. But Yang Wenjiao was a pure punishment knight. His attacks had long penetrated into his bones. So he was in for a tragedy. Boom! The huge roar caused the entire knight's trial field to tremble violently. Everyone was stunned to see a mushroom cloud erupt and rise from the center of the iron thorns. The female summoner, who had already hidden far away, subconsciously took off the cloak on her head, revealing a pretty face that was both angry and happy. She stuck out her tongue and said, "The power of this violent cherry is really not small. It won't kill him, right?" In the distant rostrum, Han Q suddenly stood up. Not only him, but all the big shots watching the battle also followed suit and stood up, because they all knew what Yang Wenjiao's true identity was. Previously, when he was stabbed by the assassin temple, it had already caused the Knights Templars to flare up. If something really happened to him, perhaps Sanshue! Han Q shouted angrily. Sanshue, Popo's facial muscles twitched. "I really don't know about this. When did this girl summon this kind of thing? I didn't teach her." Cough, 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 cough. A series of coughs came from the field. An extremely sorry figure drilled out from the iron thorns. His appearance really made people unable to restrain themselves from laughing. His originally beautiful armor was now scorched black. His helmet was also blown away. His hair was burnt and curled by the explosion. The armor on his arms and body were damaged in many places, faintly revealing bloodstains. His face was even more black and red. Looking at his appearance, he simply looked like a destitute beggar. Yang Wenjiao's current gloominess was simply indescribable with words. If he hadn't slashed with his sword, the violent cherry that could only explode on the spot might not have been able to hurt him. However, his slash was equivalent to directly detonating it. Although he was already retreating, the explosive power of the violent cherry was indeed very strong. Fortunately, his body was still burning with the flames of light, and he still had time to use all his strength to brandish his 2 swords to protect his vitals. Otherwise, this violent explosion would probably have seriously injured him. However, even so, at this moment, there wasn't a single part of his body that didn't hurt. Looking at the girl in front of him, his eyes were filled with anger. Golden light appeared again, and a holy light barrier rose up. It wasn't that Punishment Knight didn't know any healing or support skills. Holy light barrier was an essential healing skill for every knight. His 2 swords once again emitted a dazzling golden light. Yang Wenjiao fiercely stared at the female summoner, who revealed her appearance not far away, and rushed towards her with large strides. All right, you can still fight. Then I admit defeat." Bai Xiaoma said somewhat helplessly. Just as Yang Wenjiao expected, her cultivation was, after all, only at the 4th rank. In the previous series of continuous magic, her spiritual power had already been consumed by more than half. It was no longer possible to set up like before. Since that was the case, he might as well admit defeat. His charging footsteps came to an abrupt halt. Yang Wenjiao only felt as if there was a lump of air in his chest. Was this considered a win? Had he ever seen someone who won in such a sorry state like him? His face was full of grief and indignation, and he thought to himself, I'm simply the spokesperson for the word sadness. Can you not be like this? However, the other party had already admitted defeat, and he couldn't just rush over and continue to attack. He was very regretful that he didn't summon his mount. Yang Wenjiao secretly swore that he wouldn't pretend anymore in the following matches, and he would definitely summon his mount and go all out. Looking at his charred body, his heart was the same as the previous Han Q Holy Night. It was bleeding. Yang Wenjiao versus Bai Xiaoma. Yang Wenjiao wins, enters the top 8. The referee's announcement rang out, and at the same time, this first match ended. Even though the female summoner, Bai Xiaoma, had lost, her strange fighting style had left a deep impression on everyone present. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Bai Xiaoma's plant summoning had extremely strong controllability. If one could have such a teammate, whether it was a group battle or a solo battle, it would be the best helper. Moreover, she was only at the 4th rank. She was already able to make Yang Wenjiao, who was at the 5th rank, in such a sorry state. What would happen after she entered the 5th rank? It was still unknown to how strong she would become. It was merely the first match of the top 16, and it had already shocked all the spectating contestants. Those contestants who weren't able to advance also felt a lot less unconvinced in their hearts. However, the following second match made them a little disappointed. In the second match, it was Lin Xian and Long Haochen, the brother and sister pair. They didn't even fight at all. As soon as they got on the stage, Lin Xian admitted defeat to the referee. This kind of situation was quite rare in the top 16 of the Monster Hunters preliminaries. After all, it was very difficult to get to this stage. With every step forward, it could be said that the status of the Monster Hunters in the Alliance would increase. Even if they thought that their strength was inferior to their opponent, most of them would still choose to fight. However, there was no rule that forbade one from admitting defeat, so the referee could only announce that Long Haochen won and entered the top 8. With regards to Lin Xian's admission of defeat, Han Q was quite satisfied. At least she didn't exhaust Long Haochen's strength. The following matches were still carried out every day. If one exhausted too much in the previous match, it would obviously affect the following matches. Lin Xian's admission of defeat in the second match didn't affect the excitement of today's match. The next 4 matches were all exciting, and they wouldn't admit defeat until the last moment. The winning side also had to pay a certain price. After all, the strength of the contestants who could get to this stage was not too far apart. Kai, it's your turn. Long Haochen held Kai Er's hand nervously. Kai nodded lightly and said in a low voice, I'll be fine. Long Haochen wanted to send her to the arena, but Kai refused. She held the green bamboo cane in her hand and slowly walked to the arena alone. Seeing the blind Kai enter the arena, the spectating contestants had different feelings. Basically, they were divided into 2 completely opposite groups. One group was naturally full of doubts. How could a blind girl enter the top 16? The other group was nervous and excited at the same time because they had all witnessed Kai Er's strength. The assassins from the Assassin Temple, in particular, even cheered. With her tyrannical performance in the preliminary round, Kai had already won everyone's recognition. Walking slowly into the arena, Kai slowly stood still. Her opponent had never met her in the competition before, so there was a hint of doubt and confusion in his eyes. This girl is from the Assassin Temple? Kai's opponent was a young man in his 20s. He had a medium build and held a red magic cane in his hand. He was the other grade 4 summoner from the Soul Temple who entered the top 16. In the previous competition, the Soul Temple's performance was remarkable. Although Bai Xiaoma failed to advance, she made Yang Wenjiao, who had a high chance of reaching the top of this year's competition, embarrassed. the other level 5 beast tamer, on the other hand, easily entered the top 8. The person in front of him was the last disciple of the Soul Temple to fight today. Assassin Temple Kai, or vs Soul Temple Fangzhou. Due to the difference in their professions, the two sides were 40 meters apart. For pillars rose from the arena. Both sides get ready. Following the referee's announcement, for thick pillars slowly rose from the ground. Kai, and the summoner called Fangzhou also slowly retreated until there was a distance of 40 meters between them. At this moment, no one was more nervous than Long Haochen, who was in the resting area. He nervously observed the situation in the arena and wished that he could rush up and replace Kai. Lin Xian looked at him and couldn't help but smile. Silly boy, don't be so nervous. Don't worry, nothing will happen. I've seen Kai's strength. I'm afraid that even you might not be able to defeat her. You just wait and see. Okay, Long Haochen replied, but in fact, he didn't even hear Lin Xian's words. No matter what others said, the anxiety in his heart wouldn't lessen at all. He just kept thinking, Kai can't see, and she's so weak, what if she gets hurt? Long Haochen had already thought it through. If Kai was hurt by the opponent, even if it was against the rules of the competition, he would immediately rush in to heal her. Silently, he had already started to prepare the holy light barrier. Match start. Following the referee's announcement, the 7th round of the 16-8 competition officially began. Although Fangzhou had never seen Kai, or before, he didn't look down on his opponent just because she was a blind girl. To be able to reach this stage with a cultivation of the 4th stage, it wasn't as simple as just strength. His will was also firm and cautious. He pointed the reddish-brown staff in his hand forward, and the clear cry of a bird rang out. A large azure bird that was about a meter in length soared through the air. This was a summoning without any incantation. It seemed that this summoning magic was stored in his staff. Just from this, it could be seen that his staff was at least a spirit demon equipment. The green bird soared into the sky and flew quickly in the direction of Kai. A faint green light also shone from its body. The moment the referee announced the start of the match, Kai held the green bamboo staff and walked in the direction of her opponent. Her speed wasn't fast. It was no different from walking normally. The green bamboo staff lightly tapped on the ground as she walked slowly. Her aura was completely restrained. It looked like an ordinary blind girl taking a stroll. The green bamboo staff didn't make a sound when it tapped on the yellow ground. It only left a simple dent. After Fangzhou released the green bird, he had already started chanting an incantation in a hurried voice. The incantation of a summoner was different from that of a magician. The speed of their incantations was usually faster. It required frequency and not the rhythm of a magician. The deep and powerful incantation sounded urgently, and the brownish-red staff in his hand became brighter and brighter. A strong, beast-like aura spread out from the staff. Kai had only walked 10 meters when the green bird was already above her head. In an instant, it swooped down in the direction of Kai. It spread its wings, and with an ear-piercing whistle, 2-meter-wide wind blades slashed straight at Kai. Kai didn't stop moving forward. She still walked slowly. Long Haochen, who was in the resting area, almost cried out in surprise. Just as the 2 wind blades were about to hit Kai's body, something strange happened. Kai didn't seem to have done anything, but in that instant her body became illusory. Immediately afterwards, those 2 wind blades unexpectedly passed through her body, and with 2 puff sounds, they smashed into the ground behind her, leaving behind 2 deep depressions. At this moment, the green bamboo staff in Kai's hand rose up like lightning. A cold and sharp killing intent flashed and disappeared. The green bird's body wasn't very big. The moment Kai made her move, it already felt the danger. It quickly flapped its wings and made a dexterous, evasive move. However, the green bamboo staff that Kai raised instantly burst out with 3 rays of light. The length of the light was actually more than 30 feet. Poof! The green bamboo staff touched the ground. Kai was still walking forward slowly. The distance between her and the summoner was getting closer. Her aura didn't change because of the green bird's attack. It was as if everything was just an illusion. But was it really an illusion? The green bird that was evenly divided into 8 pieces fell to the ground with its own blood, splashing up a cloud of dust. It didn't even have the chance to dodge the green bamboo staff that Kai had just raised. Long Houchin exclaimed when he saw the wind blade hit Kai. His voice stopped in his throat. 20 meters away from Kai, Fang Zhu, who was in the middle of rapidly chanting an incantation, suddenly had his pupils shrink to the size of a needle. His hurried incantation was almost interrupted by the scene that just happened. The storm bird was killed in a second. That was a real 4th-level magical beast. Even if it couldn't hurt the enemy, it could at least disturb them, right? However, from the beginning to the end, it didn't have the slightest effect on the advancing figure of Kai. The light from the green bamboo staff was even neater than the chef's cutting. What caused Fang Zhu's back to be instantly covered in cold sweat was that instant of extremely sharp, killing intent. At this moment, he had already realized what kind of opponent he was facing, even if she couldn't see. But her tyrannical strength still made Fang Zhu feel an unprecedented and terrifying pressure. Kai's speed was still very slow, but just like in the preliminary round, with every step she took, Fang Zhu's mental pressure increased a little. However, this Fang Zhu was indeed outstanding. Under such circumstances, he still managed to complete his incantation. He pointed his staff forward, and a brownish-red light shot out, turning into a door of light. Immediately after, a loud roar sounded, and a huge, sturdy figure drilled out from the door of light. 6th-level magical beast, giant adamantine bear. For a 4th-level summoner, being able to summon a 6th-level magical beast was already a summon of a higher level. This was closely related to his own spiritual energy and equipment. But even so, after completing this summon, Fang Zhu's face still became pale. But it was a pale expression of relief. Without a doubt, the best way to deal with an assassin was to have a strong defense and an unbeatable strength. Fang Zhu's choice could be said to be very correct. The giant adamantine bear stretched out its paws, picking up Fang Zhu's body and placing him on its shoulder. Then it stood up straight. This fellow's body was extremely sturdy. When it stood up, it was close to 4 meters tall, and its majestic body was like a small mountain. It was a stark contrast to Kai, who was slowly walking towards it. As a 6th-level magical beast, the giant adamantine bear only had one innate skill, earthen roar. It could create an indiscriminate attack on the ground like an earthquake. Its greatest characteristic was that its skin was coarse and its flesh was thick, and its defense and strength were extremely high. With huge strides it charged towards Kai. Fang Zhu's staff flashed again, and a gentle yellow light enveloped him and the giant adamantine bear, making it seem as if his body was glued to the giant adamantine bear's shoulder. No matter how the giant adamantine bear moved, it wouldn't shake him off. At this moment, Kai suddenly moved. As the saying goes, quiet as a virgin, quick as a rabbit. The instant Kai moved, her speed was so fast that she left behind a trail of afterimages. Originally, she was only 10 meters away from the giant adamantine bear. In a flash, she appeared in front of the giant adamantine bear. Under Fang Zhu's control, the giant adamantine bear instantly stomped its foot on the ground. With a loud rumble, the earthen roar activated, and a yellow earthquake erupted in all directions. However, Kai once again showed everyone her tyrannical strength. She didn't dodge, she didn't jump, and she didn't retreat. She raised the green bamboo staff in her hand and made a slashing motion. A dark shadow flashed, and a scene that left everyone dumbfounded appeared. That omnidirectional earthquake actually split open in front of Kai. As if it had been cut open by a sharp blade. It didn't affect her forward momentum at all. In the next moment, Fang Zhu couldn't see Kai, Er's figure anymore. The competitors who were resting could only vaguely see two streaks of dark gold light flash by. Immediately after, the giant adamantine bear, with its astonishing defensive power, actually fell to the ground with a thud, as if a mountain of gold had been pushed down or a jade pillar toppled over. It even let out a mournful howl. 2 arrows of blood shot out from the joints behind his knees. Then a quiet figure floated up from behind like a wisp of smoke. She placed 1 foot on the giant adamantine bear's head. The end of the green bamboo staff pressed against the artery in Feng Zhu's neck. No one doubted that she only needed a light movement to instantly end Feng Zhu's life. Dumbfounded, Feng Zhu was dumbfounded. He had never imagined that he would be defeated so easily. The level 6 giant adamantine bear didn't even have the chance to fight her head-on. The giant adamantine bear unwillingly swung its paw at the top of its head. In response, Kai only lightly trembled at the tip of her foot. In that instant, everyone could only see Kai's body light up with a dark golden radiance, and the giant adamantine bear's body instantly stagnated. That pair of thick bear paws drooped down powerlessly, and blood crazily spurted from its nose and mouth. It seemed to have suffered a heavy injury. I admit defeat. Feng Zhu dejectedly put down the staff in his hand. He had lost and lost miserably. From start to finish, he didn't even have the slightest ability to resist. On the platform, Spirit Empress Sen Shui said in a daze, "What kind of spirit power is that? Why is it dark gold?" Ing Suifeng glanced at her, smiled faintly, and said, "I don't know either." Floating down, Kai didn't even say a word. Her green bamboo staff touched the ground, and she slowly walked towards the resting area. Kai wins. The referee swallowed a mouthful of saliva with some difficulty. This battle looked simple and straightforward. In front of Kai, both Feng Zhu and his summoned beast seemed so clumsy. The resting area fell into a momentary silence. Almost everyone felt their necks tighten. As they watched Kai slowly walk back to the resting area, the young geniuses participating in the competition all felt their breathing become heavy. Speed, attack power, as well as that cold and sharp killing intent, all of them brought them immense pressure. Even though they didn't participate in the battle just now, it was hard for them to calm down at this moment. Too powerful. The Assassin Temple actually had such a powerful existence. Yang Wenjiao's neck also tightened, and his chest seemed to ache faintly again. He was already beginning to wonder if he could fight against this lady, even if he rode on a mount. Kai used her actions to show everyone the elegance of an assassin. Long Haochen blankly watched as Kai returned to his side and slowly sat down. Although he didn't feel his neck tighten, the way he looked at Kai had changed a lot. He slowly lowered his head and didn't look at her again. He was silently thinking about something. The soft and tender little hand quietly drilled into his palm. Kai didn't say anything, but her nimble index finger moved a few times in his palm. Long Haochen's originally somewhat gloomy heartstrings were immediately plucked and rippled. She was writing, "What's wrong with you?" The itchy feeling brought these 4 words. It was a little strange, but it also made Long Haochen's mood a little better. Long Haochen pulled her little hand and said in her white and tender palm, "You're so powerful. Do you still need my protection?" Kai's palm trembled slightly. She flipped her hand and wrote in his palm, "Do you regret it?" "No," Long Haochen blurted out. He pulled her hand and wrote in a serious tone, "I will never regret it." Kai was silent. She held his hand tightly. After a long while, she wrote again on his palm, "You're not only protecting me, but also my heart." Long Haochen's heart trembled. He repeated the words she wrote in his heart. "You're not only protecting me, but also my heart." In an instant, he only felt as if a layer of his heart had been pierced, and his state of mind suddenly became clear. "That's right. I want to protect her." What does it have to do with her own strength or weakness? What I want to do is to protect her. Don't tell me I won't do it just because she's strong. Kai, or just silently held his hand. After a little hesitation, she slowly leaned her head on his shoulder. At the moment of contact, both of their hearts gently trembled. Long Houchin clearly felt that Kai's hand became hot. Lin Xian sat on the other side of Long Houchin. She had been paying attention to their movements. When Kai leaned on Long Houchin's shoulder, she seemed to have heard the sound of eyeballs falling to the ground behind her. After all, the contestants who entered the top 16 were sitting in the first row. Almost everyone could see what was happening in front of them. At this time, no one was even paying attention to the ongoing 8th match. Everyone's eyes were focused on Long Houchin and Kai. Is that the powerful female assassin who defeated her opponent in an instant just now? She's actually so helpless? Looking at Kai, leaning on Long Houchin's shoulder, many people's impression of her as the cold and unparalleled Queen of Assassins was subverted. The top 16 matches ended. Although the lot that Knights Templars drew wasn't very good, 3 of them still entered the top 8. 2 from Assassin Temple, 1 each from Magic Temple, Summoning Temple, and Warrior Temple. Tomorrow it would be an even more intense battle for the top 8. Moreover, tomorrow's lot drawing was still random. There was also no restriction of today's group ranking. The battle between the strong would definitely take place. This time Long Houchin and Kai didn't leave early. Instead, they were the last to leave. Lin Xian didn't disturb them and quietly left. I want to treat you to a meal, can I? Long Houchin whispered to Kai, who was leaning on him. His body was a little stiff. He also wanted to try to hug her waist and feel that alluring curve and slender elasticity again, but he didn't dare to. Kai slowly raised her head and sat up straight. Her face, hidden under the veil, was frighteningly hot. She lightly shook her head. No need. Go back early. The next matches are very important. You have to maintain your condition. Oh, slightly disappointed, Long Houchin agreed. Kai's delicate ears moved slightly. She murmured in a very soft voice, "There's still time in the future." Long Houchin always had sharp ears. Hearing this, he immediately turned around and looked straight into her eyes. Kai looked up at him with some doubt. What's wrong? Long Houchin swallowed a mouthful of saliva and plucked up his courage. What I want to say is, if I get the first place, can you let me hug you? Kai's voice instantly rose an octave. Long Houchin was so scared that he stood up and waved his hand. I'm sorry, I just like you too much. Just pretend I didn't say anything. Don't be angry. Although Kai couldn't see, she could clearly feel his fear and trepidation. She chuckled and gently nodded to him. Standing up? She touched the ground with her green bamboo cane. She jumped up and flew away gracefully. Kai, slow down. Long Houchin was afraid that she would fall because she couldn't see him, so he hurriedly chased after her. On the rostrum, in a dark corner, Han Q waved his fist forcefully. Good job. You're not old, but your ability is not small. Shadow, did you see that? Just now, that little girl was snuggling up to him. Waha, it seems that this matter is done. Snuggle your sister. Ing Sui Fong said somewhat gloomily. This development is indeed a bit too fast. Han Q patted Ing Sui Feng's shoulder with a smile. Brother, thank you. Thank you, Assassin Temple, for nurturing such an outstanding talent. I'm very comforted, but I'm very uncomfortable in my heart. Little Han, you've been stuck at the bottleneck of the 8th rank for many years. I'll help you stimulate your potential. I believe Old Man Yang won't have any objections. Chapter 42. A somewhat distorted figure gradually became clear in front of Han Q. If Long Houchin was here, he would definitely recognize this thin old man who seemed to have walked out of the void. It was the one in front of the Heavenly Saint Union's treasury. Han Q's expression immediately changed, and he said with a bitter face, "Senior Sheng, I was wrong. Don't stoop to my level and stoop to my level." The thin old man coldly snorted, "Less nonsense. Come with me to the assassin's trial field. If you don't want to go, I'll go find your disciple and bring him there." Han Q let out a long sigh and looked like he was going to die for justice. "I'll go, okay? You have to be lenient." The thin old man stepped into the void and instantly disappeared, leaving only his cold snort in the air. Han Q looked at Ing Sui Fong, and Ing Sui Fong helplessly said, "Next time watch your stupid mouth. Brother, we'll pray for you." Han Q said with a sad face, "Senior Sheng is already so old, but his temper is still like a raging fire. Brother, I'm going." In the end, Long Haochen couldn't catch up to Kai, and could only helplessly walk back to his residence. As he walked, he suddenly realized something. His beautiful big eyes slightly widened. Kai last, and could it be that she agreed to my request? She's willing to let me hug her? Yes, it must be. I'm too stupid to think of it at this time. If it wasn't like this, why would Kai run away? Long Haochen only felt a raging flame rise from within his body in an instant, his heart burning hot. His left hand moved, and he couldn't help but recall the wonderful feeling he had when he held Kai's slender waist that day. I must go back and continue to cultivate. I must get first place. This strong belief made the young man full of motivation, and he took large strides back to his residence. On the side of the street, in an inconspicuous corner, Kai listened to the change in his footsteps. Her pretty face blushed, and her mouth curved into a charming smile. On the second day of the elimination round, the atmosphere became even more intense. Today, the quarterfinals would be held. Whoever won today would have a 75% chance of obtaining a spiritual stove. Without a doubt, every participant would give their all in today's competition. Long Haochen and Lin Xian arrived at the knight's training field early in the morning. Kai was still sitting at the same place as yesterday. Long Haochen leaned over and quietly held her hand. She only slightly lowered her head and did not say anything. Because Lin Xian admitted defeat yesterday, she had been eliminated. She could only sit in the rest area at the back. Long Haochen especially liked this kind of touching atmosphere that only the two of them could feel. He just held her hand with a satisfied smile on his face. 8-4, the drawing of lots will begin. The top 8 contestants, please enter the arena. Long Haochen pulled Kai to stand up. To his surprise this time, Kai did not pull her hand back. Instead, she held his hand, and just like that, they walked into the arena. Kai was a smart and opinionated girl. When she leaned on Long Haochen's shoulder yesterday, she was no longer afraid of others talking about her. At that moment, she also completely faced up to her relationship with Long Haochen. The other 6 contestants looked at the young couple, and their expressions more or less changed. Some of them had experienced Long Haochen's strength, while others did not know. However, everyone had seen the tyrannical strength that Kai had displayed yesterday. Soon, the top 8 contestants arrived at the center of the arena. The method of drawing lots was no different from the day before. It was just that there were fewer people. Long Haochen was a little surprised to find that his grandmaster's complexion was a little ugly today. More accurately, it was an unhealthy paleness. His eyes were lifeless, and his facial muscles twitched from time to time. He did not know what was going on. The drawing of lots begins. Han Q said weakly. He sighed inwardly. This old man is already so old, and yet he still got beaten up. This is too pitiful. Long Haochen held Kai's hand as he raised his other hand and pressed it against the halo. At the same time, he also raised his head and looked at the other contestants. Of the other 6 contestants in the top 8, he only knew 2 of them, Yang Wenjiao and Huang Yi. Of the remaining 4, only the 5th order knight Long Houchen had a slight impression of him. Rays of golden light flashed, and the drawing of lots was completed in an instant. In the process of drawing lots, Long Houchen's gaze was always on Kai. Naturally, the one he didn't want to draw the most was her. It seemed that his luck was not bad. The two of them had different shades of gold. Obviously, they would not meet each other today. Long Houchen then raised his head and looked at the others. The situation of the top 8 had already been decided. As the saying goes, some people are happy, some people are sad. The most depressed one was Huang Yi, because his opponent in the top 8 was Kai. When he saw that Kai's golden light was the same as his, Huang Yi only felt a bitter taste in his mouth. He knew that his path forward was most likely over. He was in a good mood. Huang Yi also knew that among the contestants today, no matter who he faced, his chances of winning would not be too high. It was just that the opponent he drew was the one he had the least chance of winning. Long Houchen also saw his opponent. Today he had to face the 5th Order Beast Tamer from the Soul Temple. Obviously, the difficulty he had to face was not small. The Knights Templars once again showed their unlucky side. Yang Wenjiao and another 5th Order Knight were drawn in the same group. In the end, he could not avoid another battle with the Knight. However, Yang Wenjiao's expression was very relaxed. Instead, he felt that his luck was very good. At least he did not encounter Kai. The last pair was naturally the Assassin Temple's other 4th Order Peak Assassin against the Warrior Temple's only advanced. Both of them were happy. Without a doubt, among the top 8 contestants, they were the weakest, followed by Huang Yi. If they went all out, they would have a chance to enter the top 4. Han Q's facial muscles twitched even more violently. His luck was too bad. He drew one of his own again. However, today, no one came to make fun of him. Today's battle was very important to the 6 great temples. Whether or not they could enter the top 4 depended on this battle. Entering the top 4 was equivalent to having 1 foot in the top 3. This was not only a spiritual stove, but also a symbol of glory for the 6 great temples. Ying Suifeng was slightly better. He had absolute confidence in Kai. Besides, the Assassin Temple already had 2 people in the top 8. Their chances were higher. Other than the Knot Temple, the Vice-Temple Masters of the other 3 temples all stared at their own disciples, using their eyes to convey something. The one with the lightest color stays. The others return to the resting area and wait for the next match. Han Q said weakly. Long Houchen's eyes lit up. Today, the ones with the lightest golden light were him and the Beast Tamer. Kai, your opponent is Huang Yi, an Earth Element Mage, 5th Order. He has an Earth Element Spirit and is good at using Earth Wave to help him change his position. You will fight in the 4th match. I will fight in the 1st match. Go back and rest first. He would not repeat yesterday's mistake. Not only did he tell her about Kai's opponent, he also told her about Huang Yi's characteristics. Long Houchen did not conceal his voice. Huang Yi's expression immediately became even more bitter. The sacred magus from the magic temple, Lin Qin, also felt bitter. He looked at Kai, then at Huang Yi, his face filled with helplessness. The others slowly retreated, leaving only Long Houchen and the Beast Tamer. The referee had already entered the arena. The protective barrier outside the arena slowly rose. Knights Templars Long Houchen versus Soul Temple's Liao Yu. Pull apart the distance of 50 meters. Long Houchen slowly retreated, carefully observing his opponent at the same time. Liao Yu was a slender young man. His height was about the same as the 14-year-old Long Houchen. He was definitely over 20 years old. His appearance was above average, and his face was slightly pale. However, he had a pair of exceptionally bright eyes. The light in his eyes was like a mirror. As he slowly retreated, he kept staring at Long Houchen. The distance between the two gradually increased, but the aura between them was already in conflict. Liao Yu held a white magic staff in his hand. This kind of color was very rare. It was hard to tell what material it was made of. The gem embedded at the top was also white. It was as white as jade and as translucent as snow. The gem was hexagonal in shape and emitted a faint chill. The match begins. The moment the distance of 50 meters was reached, the referee announced loudly. At the same time, his figure flashed, and he quickly retreated, leaving the arena to the two. Liao Yu was already prepared. The moment the match began, his incantation burst forth like a gush. At the same time, a layer of white halo was emitted from his body. It felt like his incantation was not as fast as by Xiaoma and Fang Zhu. However, his enunciation was clearer, and there seemed to be a strange rhythm to it. What was even more peculiar was that, along with the incantation, the magic staff in his hand was also waving nonstop. With a similar rhythm, one after another, strange milky white runes quickly formed in front of him. In just 3 seconds in front of him, there was already a huge white door of light, and a magical beast leaped out like lightning. It was a snow-white leopard with some dark blue-gold coin-shaped stripes. Its body was only about 2 meters long, and it did not look very strong. However, it gave people a feeling of a combination of strength and beauty. Liao Yu took a step forward, and the white halo on his body instantly fused with the snow leopard. In the next moment, he had already appeared on the back of the snow leopard. The snow shadow leopard was as fast as lightning, as fast as the wind, and specialized in ice magic. Different snow shadow leopards had different innate magic. It was one of the few magical beasts of the 5th level that specialized in speed. When he saw the magical beast that the opponent had summoned, Long Haochen immediately made a judgment. His father and teacher had taught him to recognize the majority of magical beasts, and the snow shadow leopard was naturally one of them. Without a doubt, Liao Yu did not want to use the snow shadow leopard to attack him, but to use it as a mount, relying on the speed of the snow shadow leopard to contend with him. When Liao Yu was summoning, Long Haochen did not charge at him. On his forehead, the purple rune turned into a ray of deep purple light that shone on the ground in front of him. 9 purple lines of light flashed and disappeared. Hao Yue's huge figure had already appeared in front of him. In terms of summoning speed, it was indeed faster than Liao Yu. Mount? He had a mount? Yang Wenjiao, who was sitting in the first row of the resting area, was shocked. He could not help but stare at Hao Yue in front of Long Haochen. The current Hao Yue was no longer the pitiful ground fire lizard that Long Haochen had summoned. Its 4-meter-long body was comparable to that of a ground dragon. Although it was not as tall as a ground dragon, its strong and powerful limbs and broad back all gave people a heavy and solid feeling. Its 3 heads were raised up high, and the spikes on its back that extended down from its head faintly glowed with a purple halo. The 2 bone protrusions on its back that were getting bigger were like the back of a knight. Its 3 heads and 6 eyes shone brightly. At first glance, it looked rather ferocious with its 3 heads, but after a few more glances, one could feel a biting, cold majesty from its body. It was absolutely domineering. Long Haochen's figure flashed, and he had already landed on Hao Yue's back. A strange scene appeared. The spikes on Hao Yue's back actually separated on their own and contained his body within. The protrusions on its back protruded slightly forward, supporting his body. The spikes closed inwards, firmly holding his body in place. 1 man and 1 beast were actually in perfect harmony. Before stepping into the trial field, Long Haochen was already fully equipped. The silver Holy Spirit armor glowed faintly, and his face was hidden within the helmet. At this moment, the Holy Spirit sword and Holy Spirit shield were already in his hands. The Holy Spirit set was complete. A faint silver halo was released from his body, enveloping himself and Hao Yue, causing their bodies to be covered in a layer of faint silver light. This was the skill that came with the set, Holy Spirit's protection. In terms of appearance alone, Long Haochen, who was clad in silver armor, a silver sword and a silver shield, and riding on 3 Hao Yue heads, was much more tyrannical than Liao Yu, who was opposite him. Hao Yue's 3 heads let out a roar at the same time, and its 4 claws swung out, brazenly charging in the direction of its opponent. Each of its 3 heads shone with a different light. Long Haochen sat on its back, appearing extremely calm. A layer of golden mist rose from his body in a ring shape, accumulating power. That's right, sitting on Hao Yue's back, he did not need to move at all, and using the accumulating power skill was just right. If it could be said that all the competitions that Long Haochen had participated in before were to hone his strength, increase his combat experience, and stimulate his own potential, then, from today onwards, he would be fighting solely for the sake of victory. There was only one reason, and that was for Kai. In the resting area, Yang Wenjiao's expression had already become solemn. He had fought a great battle with Long Haochen before, and he had won in that battle. Moreover, he had won while holding back. However, at this moment, when he looked at Long Haochen again, he suddenly realized that this youth, who was much younger than him, seemed to have changed into a different person. 5th rank mount. His original advantage had been rapidly reduced. In less than a month's time, he had undergone earth-shattering changes. Yang Wenjiao was not surprised by the strength that he had displayed, but more surprised by the speed at which he had improved. Roar, roar, roar. Hao Yue's 3 heads roared angrily again, and 3 different colored lights shone at the same time. The battle was about to begin. Chapter 43. Long Haochen rode on Hao Yue and charged towards Liao Yu. Liao Yu's snow shadow leopard also moved. He was only a summoner. Once the knight got close to him, it would mean his defeat. Liao Yu's surprise was no less than Yang Wenjiao's. As a summoner, he was confident that no one in the same level as him would be more familiar with magical beasts. However, he did not recognize Long Haochen's mount. What was this magical beast with 3 heads that looked like an earth dragon? Especially when he saw Hao Yue's 3 heads glowing with different colors, his expression changed. 3 attributes. Magic had elements that countered each other, and Hao Yue, who had 3 attributes, could be said to not be countered by any element. The snow shadow leopard's speed was astonishing. When it moved at full speed, it was like a bolt of white lightning, skimming to the side. Liao Yu did not stop chanting, and kept chanting rapidly. At the same time, he took out a necklace from somewhere and wore it around his neck. The necklace was silver, and there was a pink gemstone the size of a pigeon's egg hanging from it. This kind of color pendant was more suitable for girls. It was strange for a young man like Liao Yu to wear it. However, he could not care less. Whether it was Long Haochen who was charging or Hao Yue who was glowing with 3 colors, they both gave him great pressure. Hao Yue's speed was obviously slower than the snow shadow leopard's, but it was very smart. It did not have any intention of catching up to the snow shadow leopard, and only followed it from a distance. It did not take the initiative to release its magic either. The knight's trial field was 300 meters in diameter. Even though Hao Yue was pressuring the snow shadow leopard in the center of the field, the distance between them was always maintained at more than 100 meters. With Hao Yue's current level of magic, it was impossible for him to attack his opponent at such a distance. Liao Yu's chanting did not stop, and he maintained a high frequency of chanting that echoed throughout the field. The pink gemstone on the necklace began to emit a layer of pink light, which combined with the light emitted by the white staff in his hand. One after another, strange symbols appeared around Liao Yu's body. They formed a strange pattern. Long Haochen didn't stop accumulating power. After his spiritual power turned into liquid form, the speed at which he accumulated power decreased, but the effect of the liquid spiritual power was obviously increased. At this moment, his body was turning golden. The Holy Spirit armor had been completely dyed golden. An incomparable divine aura continued to rise from his body, and the oppressive force that erupted from his body grew stronger and stronger. After all, the snow shadow leopard's physical strength was limited. After it ran around the night training field at its highest speed for 3 rounds, its explosive power gradually decreased, and its speed also slowed down. At this moment, Liao Yu's incantation was finally completed. One could clearly see that there were a total of 36 strange symbols surrounding his body. These symbols were all pink, like a layer of pink gauze enveloping him. A terrifying barbaric aura erupted the moment these strange symbols were completed. The terrifying pressure caused the protective barrier around the entire training ground to tremble. On the rostrum, all the experts looked at each other in dismay. Sacred Magus Lin Chin said in astonishment, "Are the youngsters nowadays so powerful? What is this? Barbaric magical beast summoning?" All the so-called barbaric magical beasts were mutated species passed down from ancient times and were much stronger than ordinary magical beasts. The weakest barbaric magical beast was at least of the 7th rank. They would usually only exist in some special places and deep in the mountains and swamps. The 36 pink symbols rose up and spread outwards, turning into a huge pink halo that slowly disappeared into the air. However, as they disappeared, a steaming red halo appeared above Liao Yu's head. At this moment, Hao Yue suddenly moved. In the previous exchanges, the speed it had displayed was very ordinary, only that of an ordinary 6th rank magical beast. However, at this moment, an intense green light appeared on its body, causing its huge body to float slightly. At the same time, an intense green light instantly burst forth from its back, propelling its huge body at an astonishing speed towards Liao Yu as it transformed into a beam of green light. Naturally, it wasn't just Greenie who moved. An astonishing red light soared into the sky, turning into a scarlet halo in the air. The red light rebounded and descended from the sky, landing on Long Haochen's body, which had already turned completely golden. This was the support version of Dazzling Fire Dance, a peak level 5 fire support spell. Boom! Intense golden red flames suddenly erupted. Sitting upright on Hao Yue's back, Long Haochen was as dazzling as a god of war. Light's ability wasn't as dazzling as Greenie's and Fireball's, but from its head, 3 golden halos erupted in succession. Trusty Halo, Radiant Halo, Faith Halo. Among them, even Long Haochen didn't know the Radiant Halo. This halo could instantly increase the attack power of all light attribute skills by 20% and produce a compression effect on the light element. Liao Yu wasn't the only one chanting the incantation. Hao Yue and the other 2 had long since prepared their incantations, waiting for this moment to erupt. Light, Fireball, and Greenie actually erupted with 6 skills in an instant for support and 2 speed. Almost in an instant, Long Haochen's battle prowess was raised to its peak. Liao Yu's expression changed somewhat. This powerful summon of his, relying on a medium to transcend ranks, could only launch one attack, but he had absolute confidence in its power to defeat Long Haochen. However, at the same time that this summoning spell was completed, the speed of the Snow Shadow Leopard was greatly reduced due to the influence of the savage pressure. In addition, the Snow Shadow Leopard's physical strength had already been greatly depleted, and its speed was no longer faster than Hao Yue's. More importantly, this summoning spell required 3 breaths of time to be released. And it was also at this moment that Hao Yue launched the Wind, Magic Levitation, and Wind Pillar, propelling its body forward at such a rapid speed. The timing of Hao Yue's attack was not Long Haochen's instruction, but Hao Yue's own timing. Even Long Haochen didn't know how it could make such a sharp judgment. Even with Long Haochen's perception, he could only make a clear judgment in the next moment. In just 2 breaths of time, Hao Yue had already carried Long Haochen across 100 meters. At this moment, all Liao Yu could do was to urge the Snow Shadow Leopard to run as fast as possible, to fight for this last bit of time for himself. In that instant, white light gushed out from Long Haochen's chest. One could faintly see a small white tripod furnace hovering in front of his chest, and the gentle white light quietly fell on the Snow Shadow Leopard's body. This caused the sprinting Snow Shadow Leopard to subconsciously turn its head to look at Long Houchin. Immediately after, a strong suction suddenly pulled it out horizontally, its body unsteady, and the snow shadow leopard almost fell to the ground. Gold, brilliant gold, like a shocking long rainbow, on the Holy Spirit sword, the dazzling light and fire merged into the most dazzling light blade. A huge golden sword of up to 3 meters in length appeared in the sky, with twisted light patterns, with the unique smell of sunlight and the freshness of the air after being burned by fire, and with a dazzling tail flame, it broke through the sky. Light severing sword, a materialized light severing sword. With the power of the accumulated power and the amplification of Haoyue, Long Houchin launched the most powerful attack of his life. This attack, even a powerhouse of the 6th rank, could not withstand its sharpness. This attack seemed to have condensed all of Long Houchin's spiritual power. This was an explosion of power after compression. That golden light sword, in almost an instant, had already broken through the pink clouds. The constantly fluctuating clouds suddenly condensed, and then thousands of golden lights exploded from within. Vaguely, Long Houchin heard a chirp. Although it was only a slight sound, in that instant, whether it was him or Haoyue, they both felt as if they had been struck by lightning. A vast pressure that was accompanied by a strong sense of anger flashed by. What exactly did he summon? This question suddenly appeared in Long Houchin's mind. Although he had disrupted the other party's summoning, at this moment his heart was not at ease. Vaguely, Long Houchin felt that he had been too careless. Although this battle method was simple and direct, he had still underestimated his opponent. If he had really completed the summoning magic just now, perhaps he would have already lost. Liao Yu's eyes were filled with unwillingness, but his pale face at this moment betrayed his current state. Long Houchin's accumulated power was at full force. How could he not have completed this summoning magic with all his might? Without the overdraft of the consumption, without the medium in front of his chest, he simply could not have completed this magic. Moreover, the severity of his overdraft was equivalent to the sacrifice that Long Houchin had used before. With the quality of his body and his recovery ability, it would be impossible for him to recover without 10 days. In other words, even if he won this battle against Long Houchin, it would be very difficult for him to participate in the next round. The reason why Liao Yu made this choice was because of his keen senses. What Long Houchin did not know was that the opponent in front of him was similar to him in some aspects, and also had a special innate spiritual energy. Otherwise, he would not have been able to break through to the 5th rank at the age of 20, the summoning profession, which was the most difficult to cultivate in the 6th Great Temple. When Long Houchin summoned Haoyue, Liao Yu acutely felt the gap between him and his opponent. He knew that he could not break through Long Houchin's accumulated power, and the magical beast that he could summon was also not stronger than Haoyue. Therefore, he could only take a risk and hope that he could enter the top 4. Unfortunately, he still lost in the end. Although he was very unwilling to lose, the outcome was already decided. What else could he do? Light illuminated heaven and earth. Spiritual energy, feedback. With the support of little light, Long Houchin's almost exhausted spiritual energy slowly recovered. But Haoyue had already rushed in front of his opponent. The snow shadow leopard still wanted to resist, but it was directly suppressed by Little Fire's roaring flames and could not move, and Little Green unceremoniously bit its neck. Looking at Long Houchin, Liao Yu, who was on the verge of collapse, sighed, "I lost." Long Houchin asked, "I'm very curious, what magical beast did you want to summon just now? Its power was actually so strong." Liao Yu did not hide anything. Although he was unwilling to lose, he also quite admired Long Houchin's strength. That last sword was not just a grasp of the timing. If it did not have enough power, it would be impossible to break the summoning cloud. It's the savage vermilion bird, a variant of the level 10 mythological beast phoenix. Although I can only summon it to launch one attack, the power of this attack is comparable to that of a level 8 magical beast. That is equivalent to the attack of a level 7 professional. If the summoning really succeeded, I'm afraid the outcome will be reversed. Long Houchin's heart shook, thinking to himself, to be able to reach this step in the selection, there really is no one easy to deal with. If he really let it complete the summoning, not only would he lose, he would probably be seriously injured. How could the attack of a level 8 magical beast be so easy to resist? Long Houchin wins. While they were talking, the snow shadow leopard had already fallen to the ground, its head bitten off by Little Green. What chance did a level 4 magical beast have against a level 6 magical beast? Long Houchin jumped down, supporting Liao Yu, who was already somewhat unable to support his body. It seems that my choice of tactics is problematic. I shouldn't have used stored power to deal with you. Liao Yu calmly said, I didn't expect you to have a saint's spiritual stove. And if I didn't guess wrong, your saint's spiritual stove should have already evolved once. If possible, I sincerely hope to be in the same group as you in the Monster Hunters the day after tomorrow. Long Houchin chuckled and said, I also hope so. There was no doubt that Liao Yu was the number 1 person in the Soul Temple of the Monster Hunter selection. If he could be in the same group as him, it would naturally be a great thing. Thinking of this, Long Houchin couldn't help but think of Channing, who questioned him this morning. Compared to that unreliable summoning girl, Liao Yu was obviously much more outstanding. The staff quickly entered and helped Liao Yu out. Naturally, there were people from the Temple of the Priests who would treat him. After sending Haoyue back, Long Houchin strode towards the rest area. He clenched his fists tightly. He had entered the top 4, only 1 step away from the top 3. He was only 2 matches away from first place. The second match was between the Assassin Temple and the Warrior Temple, the 2 lucky participants who drew lots. However, drawing lots didn't mean that their matches were easy. On the contrary, this was the most brutal match in the elimination round so far. In terms of cultivation, the one from the Warrior Temple was slightly stronger, having already broken through to the 5th level. On the other hand, the one from the Assassin Temple was at the peak of the 4th level. There was a qualitative difference between the two. However, this assassin from the Assassin Temple who was able to enter the top 8 was also quite tyrannical in strength. Moreover, he possessed 3 secret skills. Relying on the protection of the huge pillars that rose up in the middle of the field, he launched an extremely arduous battle. The entire battle lasted for nearly half an hour. In the end, the assassin relied on his amazing willpower and used himself as bait. When his opponent's heavy sword slashed into his shoulder bone, he instantly counterattacked and pierced through the armor at his opponent's throat. 1 slash to the throat. Of course, he didn't really kill his opponent, but at the cost of serious injuries, he finally won the battle. If one were to sum up the secret of his victory, then it would be patience. From the beginning to the end, he was suppressed, but in the end he won with a counterattack. As the weak, he defeated a 5th-level opponent and brazenly advanced into the top 4. This match made Ing Sui Feng, who was on the rostrum, nod continuously. He decided to properly groom this assassin after this qualifier. The 3rd match was the internal battle of the Knights Templars. Before Yang Wenjiao stood up and walked towards the training field, he intentionally looked at Long Houchin. The current him looked very calm, and his heart was at peace. Before Long Houchin appeared, he had always been known as the most talented among the younger generation of the Knights Templars. This talent was not only displayed in terms of strength, but also in his heart. The strength of Long Houchin and Kai had also completely stimulated Yang Wenjiao's fighting spirit. No matter who his opponent in the next round of the top 4 was, he would definitely fight with all his might. Yang Wenjiao's opponent was a very low-profile knight. His appearance was ordinary, and there was nothing special about him. However, he was unusually calm. He looked to be slightly older than Yang Wenjiao. Knights Templars Yang Wenjiao versus Knights Templars Duan Yi. Both sides get ready. The match begins. In the preliminary stage of the Knights Templars, Long Houchin was defeated by Yang Wenjiao, while Yang Wenjiao was heavily injured by Kai and was unable to continue. This Duan Yi was the first place of the preliminary stage of the Knights Templars. His strength was naturally extraordinary. Following the referee's signal, both of them did not hesitate to summon their mounts. Both of them were 5th level, other than their own strength. It was also a competition of the strength of their mounts. Just like Long Houchin went all out, Yang Wenjiao did not hold anything back. Today, Yang Wenjiao was also wearing the same silver-white armor, but it was slightly different from Long Houchin's. In his hands was still the same pair of golden greatswords. The difference was that Duan Yi's armor was black, and so were his shield and greatsword. This was very rare among the knights. Moreover, Duan Yi's weapons and equipment were much thicker than normal equipment. At this time, Long Houchin had already returned to sit next to Kai, concentrating on the battle in front of him. He had never seen Yang Wenjiao's mount before, so he could observe it through this battle. Perhaps it was because Yang Wenjiao had defeated him before, so in his heart he hoped that Yang Wenjiao could defeat his opponent. The golden great swords in his hands drew a strange light in front of him, and a golden hexagram bloomed in front of Yang Wenjiao. Neigh! Accompanied by a long neigh, a unicorn appeared in front of everyone amidst the cries of surprise in the resting area. Its body was snow-white, and the mane on its neck was golden. A spiral golden horn stood proudly on its head. It had a pair of huge wings, and the outermost ring of feathers on its pure white wings was golden. Circles of golden light were emitted from its body. It was actually a starlight unicorn. Long Houchin had seen the beauty of this kind of unicorn with his own eyes, and had even been rejected by the king of starlight unicorns. This so-called noblest unicorn had left a deep impression on him. He really didn't expect Yang Wenjiao's mount to be a starlight unicorn. The starlight unicorn before him was 3 meters long and 8 feet tall. A pair of pure white wings slowly spread open on its back. Although it was not yet an adult, it was still very handsome. One had to know that the starlight unicorn was known as the most ideal mount for a knight. Although an adult starlight unicorn was a level 8 magical beast. Because of its high compatibility with a knight, even some level 9 magical beast mounts might not be able to compare to it. This also meant that Yang Wenjiao was a sky knight, Rumble, just as Long Houchin was admiring the starlight unicorn. On the other side, Duan Yi had also finished summoning his mount. Duan Yi's mount was far from being as beautiful and dazzling as the starlight unicorn, but it was much more terrifying. Its huge body was more than 6 meters tall, and its body was more than 3 meters long. Its 4 thick limbs were like 4 giant pillars. Its long red fur hung down, and 2 huge fangs protruded from its mouth. The most peculiar thing was that there was a golden red horn on its head. This was a golden horn mammoth, a dual elemental pinnacle level 8 magical beast of light and fire. Oh, no, this golden horn mammoth was also underage. An adult golden horn mammoth would probably be more than twice its size. But even so, this terrifying magical beast strength was probably at the pinnacle of level 6 or level 7. In terms of aura, it was even more imposing than the starlight unicorn. In yesterday's elimination round, whether it was Long Houchin, Yang Wenjiao, or Duan Yi, none of them had released their mounts. Today, when they released their mounts for the competition, the rostrum was completely silent. Even though the other 5 temples were somewhat unwilling to admit it, they all understood. Knights, Templars, truly deserved to be ranked first. The younger generation of knight was not just powerful alone. Whether it was Long Houchin, Yang Wenjiao, or Duan Yi, they could all be said to be genius knight. Even Han Yu, who was eliminated by Long Houchin in the preliminary round due to his arrogance, was also a rank 5 knight. There was even another rank 5 knight who was eliminated in yesterday's competition. Even Lin Xan, a female knight with a rose unicorn, entered the top 16 of this year's competition. If it wasn't for the bad luck of the draw, perhaps tomorrow's semifinals would be a one-man show for Knights Templars. Yang Wenjiao stepped forward and got on the Starlight Unicorn. On the other side, the Golden Horned Mammoth was a little too tall. It was not practical to jump on it. However, Duan had his ways. The Golden Horned Mammoth lifted one of its front hooves. After Duan leaped up, he stepped on the front hooves first and used the momentum to jump again. He successfully rode on the Golden Horned Mammoth's thick neck. The Starlight Unicorn ran a few steps, spread its wings, and glided into the air. A faint golden halo spread from under its feet. It was noble, elegant, dazzling, and majestic. Seeing the Starlight Unicorn in the air, Long Haochen could only hear praises coming from behind him. Yang Wenjiao, who was riding on the Starlight Unicorn, was filled with the temperament of a Prince Charming. However, not everyone was praising him. There was at least one exception. Qining sat beside Wang Yuanyuan. Looking at Yang Wenjiao in the air, she curled her lips and said, "Show off." Wang Yuanyuan looked at her doubtfully and said, "Inger, do you know him?" Qining,'s beautiful face revealed a bit of disgust. She turned her head away and said no. In the air, Yang Wenjiao slowly raised his two swords on both sides of his body. A gentle golden light spread out and merged with the golden light emitted by the unicorn in a short time, becoming the same color. At this moment, the aura emitted by Yang Wenjiao was not only full of light attribute light, but also a strong holy aura. The golden halo under the unicorn's feet also turned into a hexagram. Spreading its wings, the Starlight Unicorn's crystal-clear eyes did not have the slightest hostility. It glided down and headed straight for the Golden Horned Mammoth's head. Boom! On the Golden Horned Mammoth's side, a thick golden-red flame instantly rose. At first glance, it looked like a huge golden-red fireball. Duan slowly raised the enlarged heavy sword in his hand. The golden-red flame instantly rose, and the flame emitted from the tip of the sword was more than 3 meters long. Seeing that the Starlight Unicorn was approaching, about 15 meters away from the Golden Horned Mammoth, Yang Wenjiao launched his first attack. Light Severing Sword Cross Slash. The power of the light severing sword burst out from the pair of golden great swords at the same time. The cross slash appeared out of nowhere and went straight for Duan on the Golden Horned Mammoth's neck. Just as the radiant blade was about to be unleashed, 2 specks of golden light floated out from the Starlight Unicorn's horn and fused with the radiant blade. Suddenly, the radiant blade underwent a qualitative change. The 2 blades of light glittered with resplendent starlight, and the dense holy aura and pressure it exuded completely transformed the originally weak attack. Duan Yi's expression turned serious. He slashed out with a heavy sword in his hand, and the golden red flame turned into a huge flaming sword, colliding with the cross slash. Suddenly, countless dazzling lights exploded in the air and scattered in all directions. The Starlight Unicorn streaked across the sky again. At this time, he could not help but think of how great it would be if he could Long Haochen's ready skill. He would be able to fully unleash the Sky Knight's advantage. Yang Wenjiao secretly made up his mind. After the competition ended, he would definitely use the reward to learn this skill. Was accumulating power really that useless? Long Haochen had already won several matches with this skill. Moreover, the greatest advantage of Ready was that it could help the knight burst out with the power of a higher rank attack. How could Long Haochen's previous slash in the competition be as simple as a rank 5 attack? It had at least reached the attack power of a rank 6 Radiance Knight. One in the air, one on the ground. The 2 sides crossed each other. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell who had the upper hand in the earlier collision. On the Starlight Unicorn's body, the golden light was clear and there were no changes. Although Duan had blocked the cross slash, the golden red flames rising from the Golden Horned Mammoth's body clearly drifted backward as if it had been blown away by a gale. The Starlight Unicorn circled in the air, and Yang Wenjiao's dual swords were already shining in the air. A holy white light rose, and it was the power of condensing the holy sword. Moreover, both swords were condensing the holy sword at the same time. At this time, the Starlight Unicorn's power was even more apparent. Halos in the shape of a hexagram rose from its body, and Yang Wenjiao's speed of condensing the holy sword was at least twice as fast. When the Starlight Unicorn launched another gliding charge, his dual swords were already emitting a glaring white sword glow. Duan Yi's eyes flickered, but surprisingly he did not use any skills when he saw Yang Wenjiao gliding down. "I admit defeat," a deep voice echoed throughout the arena under the stimulation of spiritual power. Huh. Yang Wenjiao was stunned and hurriedly raised the holy sword that he was about to slash. The Starlight Unicorn glided over the golden horned mammoth's head and circled in the air before arriving in front of Duan Yi again. "Brother Duan, you admit defeat?" Yang Wenjiao looked at him, puzzled. Both sides had only carried out probing attacks. It could be said that the match had not really begun. Duan Yi's eyes seemed to be struggling, but he still nodded at Yang Wenjiao. "In terms of overall strength, I'm confident that I'm not weaker than you. But I also know that with the Starlight Unicorn and the ability to soar in the air, you're already in an invincible position. Perhaps if I go all out, you'll have to pay a huge price if you want to defeat me. However, it's too difficult for me to win this match. Our cultivations are about the same, but the aerial superiority of the Punishment Knight and the Starlight Unicorn makes me unable to see any hope of victory. If you came from another temple, I'd definitely fight with all my might. But we're both knight." At this point, he paused for a moment before shouting in a deep voice, "For the glory of the night." As he spoke, Duan Yi raised the shield in his left hand to protect the left side of his body, and the heavy sword in his right hand was placed in front of the shield. Then he pressed it against his left chest and performed a standard Guardian Knight salute. This phrase, "for the glory of the night," was enough to tell Yang Wenjiao everything. Yang Wenjiao's expression instantly became solemn, and his eyes revealed deep respect. He held both swords in front of his chest and waved them in a crisscrossed manner. Then he flipped his wrist and held the hilt of his right sword against his left chest, performing a Punishment Knight salute. In a loud voice, he said, "For the glory of the night." Yang Wenjiao's admiration for Duan Yi was sincere. There was no doubt that Duan Yi's surrender did not mean that he did not have the strength to fight. It was just that he felt that his chances of winning were small. So he gave the chance to advance to Yang Wenjiao, who was slightly stronger than him, instead of going all out. There were still matches after this. If they both suffered losses, it would mean that Knights Templars would lose a competitive spot in the top 4. After a probing attack, Duan Yi chose to directly surrender, which was to preserve Yang Wenjiao's competitive strength, coupled with Long Haochen, who had already advanced. Even if the two of them were drawn into the same group in the top 4, Knights Templars would still occupy 2 of the top 3 places as long as there were no accidents. The assassin who barely made it into the top 4 in the previous match would definitely be at the bottom. Yang Wenjiao asked himself if he was in such a situation. It would be difficult for him to be as magnanimous and decisive as Duan Yi. The phrase that they each shouted, "For the glory of the night," had already explained why this match ended so quickly. Yang Wenjiao deliberately shouted loudly to tell everyone that Duan Yi was not worse than him. On the rostrum, Han Qiu nodded slightly, and his face showed a hint of gratification. The leaders of the other major temple were silent. In their eyes, there was undisguised envy. Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi, one was the sky and the other the earth. The brilliance of these 2 young knights made everyone seem to see their future. In addition, there was the younger Long Haochen. These 3 people would definitely become the mainstay of the Knights Templars in the future, at least in their generation. The position of the Knights Templars as the head of the 6th major temple was still unshakable. After retrieving their mounts and weapons, Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi looked at each other and returned to the resting area with mutual appreciation. Be careful," Long Haochen reminded her in a low voice. Kai nodded slightly. Her green bamboo cane touched the ground, and she slowly walked into the arena with the sound of do, do, do. The last match of the quarterfinals, Kai against Huang Yi. Huang Yi slowly walked into the arena with a bitter face. Mages and priests were most afraid of assassins, not to mention that he was about to face such a powerful existence. No one had seen Kai-Er's bottom line. In other words, she had never shown her full strength. However, Huang Yi naturally would not admit defeat like Duan Yi. He had to give it a try. Assassin Temple's Kai-Er against Magic Temple's Huang Yi. Due to the professions of both sides, the distance between them will be 40 meters. Get ready. Assassins against mages naturally would not have the advantage of raising the giant pillar. The distance between the two sides slowly increased. Huang Yi nervously gripped his short magic cane and tried to make his breathing more even. He was already prepared to chant at any time. Match start. The 4 words that the referee shouted were like a switch on Huang Yi. Under the great pressure that Kai-Er brought him, he completely unleashed his full potential. Chanting and summoning the earth elemental sprite were done in one go. They started by chanting in tandem. The rapid chanting continuously sounded from his and the earth elemental sprite's mouths. The intensity of the chanting was almost catching up to that of the beast tamer. Kai-Er also moved. Her green bamboo cane touched the ground, and her body floated up like a cloud, rushing straight towards Huang Yi's direction. Every 30 feet, the green bamboo cane would touch the ground again, and her speed would increase sharply. Yellow light shot into the sky, and then a huge rock fell from the sky. What surprised the spectators was that this rockfall technique wasn't aimed at Kai-Er, but rather at the ground to the side. Dong! A loud sound came from the ground. Huang Yi and his earth elemental sprite were still chanting, but they did not make any sound. Silent chanting? This was a high-level technique. For mages, it was no longer as simple as a secret technique. Obviously, this was Huang Yi's final trump card. As he switched to a soundless chant, he quietly moved to the side. Too sinister. This guy was taking advantage of Kai-Er's weakness of being blind. Long Haochen, who was in the resting area, suddenly became angry. As expected, after the giant rock hit the ground, there was a thud. Kai-Er's forward speed suddenly slowed, as if she was at a loss. Then, she turned and rushed towards the direction of the giant rock. Huang Yi's face showed a trace of helplessness. He had seen Kai-Er's speed just now. She only needed 3 breaths to rush in front of him. In this situation, he had no other choice. If he let Kai-Er rush over, he would not have a chance at all. He apologized in his heart and continued chanting with his earth elemental sprite. Just like when he defeated Wang Yuan. Only by using the earth wave spell could he be invincible. Who did not want to be in the top 3? If he could win this match, there was hope for him to be in the top 3. Huang Yi was still confident that he could defeat the assassin who had won but was heavily injured. Seeing Kai-Er rushing towards the direction of the boulder, he cautiously didn't dare to make any sound. Yellow halos began to condense on his magic staff, and in at most 10 breaths of time, the earth wave spell would be completed. Chapter 44. Huang Yi had already thought it through. If he encountered Long Haochen or Yang Wenjiao during the draw for the top 4, he would immediately admit defeat. Then he would definitely have to face the assassin in the following matches for the 3rd place. Entering the top 3 was already a sure thing. Being able to obtain a spiritual stove and become the team leader to choose a team member to join his monster hunters was already his greatest wish. If he was lucky enough to draw the assassin during the draw tomorrow, then it would be even easier. There was hope for him to enter the top 2, and he might really have to fight for the 1st place. Huang Yi had always felt that his luck in this competition was pretty good, especially in the previous group matches. If Wang Yuan had performed a little better, he might not have been able to enter the top 16. His luck had been pretty good so far in the elimination rounds. He had not encountered a particularly strong opponent, and he hoped that his luck would continue to accompany him. Just as Huang, Yi saw a glimmer of hope, and everything seemed to be developing according to his plan. Suddenly, Kyer moved. Her body was like a black lightning bolt as she pounced towards Huang Yi's original position. Her speed was so fast that an afterimage was left behind. Huang Yi only felt a layer of cold sweat instantly appear on his back. If he had not moved his position, he was afraid that this dash would have been the end of him. However, before he could rejoice, Kyer had already arrived at his original position, but she did not launch an attack as Huang Yi had expected. Instead, she lightly tapped the ground with her green bamboo cane and borrowed the force to rise again. The flexible green bamboo cane was like a bowstring, pushing Kyer's body forward. Huang Yi was stunned. Disappeared? That's right in front of him. The moment Kyer rushed out, her afterimage slowly scattered in the air, unexpectedly disappearing just like that. Bang! The heavy whip at the point where his neck and shoulder met caused Huang Yi to instantly lose consciousness, and he fell limply to the ground. The earth elemental spirit also seemed to be frightened, and it quickly turned into a yellow stream of light and disappeared into his chest. Huang Yi fell limply, and the figure of Kyer appeared behind him. She slowly tapped the ground with her green bamboo cane and walked towards the direction of the resting area. This all the spectating contestants sucked in a breath of cold air, especially Yang Wenjiao. He really wanted to ask, is this lady really blind? Obviously, Huang Yi had been tricked. Kai wasn't affected by the falling rock spell at all. Whether it was the previous pause or the wrong direction, it was all to confuse him. As for the final charge, he had used shadow clone technique in midair. When Huang Yi saw her figure disappear, she actually appeared behind Huang Yi at an unparalleled speed. Next, Huang Yi suffered a tragic blow from the green bamboo staff and fainted. Assassin Temple Kyer wins. Kai returned to Long Haochen's side and sat down. Looking at her, Long Haochen couldn't help but be in a daze. He could still clearly remember the difficulty of his battle with Huang Yi not long ago. If he hadn't summoned Hao Yue at the end, he probably wouldn't have been able to defeat his opponent. However, in front of Kyer, Huang Yi became so weak. Kyer didn't even use any skills, and easily defeated her opponent. Kyer, can you not be affected by the sound? Long Haochen asked in a low voice. Kyer said, although I can't see, my other 5 senses are much sharper than ordinary people. But how can a sound fool me? Be it the magical undulations on his body, or the smell he emitted. They all clearly tell me where he is. Long Haochen suddenly said, I see. Sigh, no wonder you agreed to my request that day. Kaiyo tilted her head in confusion. Long Haochen chuckled and said, I'm afraid Yang Wenjiao is no match for you. Why don't we change our agreement? If you get first place, I'll let you hug me. Hearing this, Kyer's pretty face instantly turned red. She lightly punched him, but didn't say anything. It was no wonder that Long Haochen didn't have confidence in himself. It wasn't just a matter of strength. If he really met Kyer, he wouldn't be able to fight her at all. How could he talk about giving it his all? Long Haochen didn't care much about the ranking. Just like what Huang Yi had thought. He thought that he could still enter the top 3, as long as he could get the spiritual stove as a reward. The top 4 of this year's Monster Hunters tryouts were Long Haochen, Yang Wenjiao, Muning, and Kyer. Among them, Muning was the other person from the Assassin Temple who advanced. At this point in the competition, only the Knights Templars and the Assassin Temple were left from the 6 temples. 2 against 2, it seemed that the Knights Templars were stronger overall. However, no one dared to ignore Kyer's existence. Perhaps only the people from the Assassin Temple knew exactly how strong this girl was. Even if Mu Ning was the last, if Kyer could become the champion, then the glory of the Knights Templars would be taken away by the Assassin Temple. Moreover, many people also saw the close relationship between Kyer and Long Haochen. They might be the youngest couple in the history of monster hunters, and they might also be the couple with the greatest potential. After sending Kair back to her place, Long Haochin returned to the hotel and went straight to Yi Hua's room. "Teacher." Yi Hua looked at Long Haochin, smiled, and said, "How was today's competition?" Long Haochin smiled and said, "I've already entered the top 4. He explained the process of today's competition in detail. Yi Hua's eyes lit up and laughed. "Your results have already far exceeded my expectations. It seems that you don't need to participate in the competition for the second time." Long Haochin hesitated for a while, then said, "Teacher, I have something to discuss with you." Yi Hua said, "Go ahead." Long Haochin said, "Kair also entered the top 4. Her strength is really strong. Huang Yi, whom I could only defeat with the help of Haoyue, was actually powerless in front of her. Tomorrow is the semi-finals. If I encounter Kair during the drawing of lots, I want to give up this match and compete for the 3rd place. I am confident that I can defeat the other assassin. As long as I enter the top 3, I will have the chance to get the spiritual stove. If my opponent in the semi-finals is not Kair, I will definitely try my best to win. You chose to give up because you can't fight against her, right?" Yi Hua knew this disciple too well. Although Long Haochin was kind, he had a persevering personality. He would never give up a match just because his opponent was strong. Long Haochin nodded his head lightly. Yi Hua was silent for a while, then said, "This is a competition that belongs to you. You can decide for yourself." Long Haochin was stunned. He thought that with his teacher's personality, he would definitely scold him. Yi Hua smiled slightly. "Don't think too much. A lot of things are predestined. You have already completed your task in this competition. When the competition is over, you will join Monster Hunters. In the future, you will have to face a lot of choices. I can't always be by your side to help you decide everything. However, you have to remember, once you make a choice, it is not good to regret it. No matter if it is right or wrong, you have to bear the responsibility for your choice." "Yes." After getting Yi Hua's agreement, Long Haochin immediately heaved a sigh of relief. After saying goodbye to his teacher, he returned to his room to train. The door was closed. Yi Hua sat there quietly and sighed, "Silly boy, how can it be so simple? If the 2 of you enter the top 3, then, according to the rules of Monster Hunters, the 2 of you can't be in the same team anymore." He didn't tell this to Long Haochin because he was selfish. Why should his disciple give up so much for a woman? Everything should be decided by the will of the heavens. What Yi Hua didn't know was that because he didn't remind Long Haochin of the rules of Monster Hunters, it caused Long Haochin to encounter a lot of trouble. It was still the knight's trial field. After more than half a month of competition, it was finally time for the semi-finals. When Long Haochin held Kai, Er's hand and walked into the field together, the whole audience quieted down. The semi-finals was the stage for the knight and the assassin. It was also a head-on competition between the 2 temples. Who would get the upper hand today? First, it would depend on the drawing of lots. Compared to the drawing of lots a few days ago, Yang Wenjiao seemed to be especially calm today. It was already the semi-finals, and he didn't expect to draw any good lots. Although his gaze was calm, it was also full of determination. No matter who he faced, he would do his best to win. At this time, he was actually looking forward to meeting Long Haochin and Kair. If he faced Long Haochin, he believed that he would have a higher chance of winning. But if he faced Kai, he didn't have the slightest confidence. Because, according to the rules of Monster Hunters, if the Sky Knight encountered the assassin, the Sky Knight wasn't allowed to rise into the air. But the assassin also couldn't get the protection of the giant pillar. Han Qiu, Ing Suifeng, and the other 6 deputy temple masters came to the center of the field again. Although the deputy temple masters of the other 4 temples weren't in a good mood, they were more relaxed at this time. After all, the contestants from their respective temples had already been eliminated. Han Qiu and Ing Suifeng's expressions were a bit tense, and no one knew what they were thinking. The halos calmly separated the 6 deputy temple masters from the 4 contestants who had entered the semifinals. Han Q took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Draw the lots." For hands were raised at the same time and landed on the halos. At this time, among the 4 people who drew the lots, only Kyr was calm. The 6 deputy temple masters' gazes became focused, and their senses became especially strong. The historical moment was coming. Luck might have been useful in the previous matches, but at this point, it wouldn't play a major role anymore. Holding their breath, the whole field was silent. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the halos and the 4 people outside of them. Light flashed, and the draw ended. When everyone saw the result, they couldn't help but gasp. Yang Wenjiao was stunned, and so was Long Haochen. A hint of helplessness appeared at the corner of Long Haochen's mouth, and he slightly lowered his head. The scene that he didn't want to see the most had finally happened. Looking at the faint golden glow on his body and Kyr's body, he felt a little dry in his throat. "What's the result?" Kyr asked softly. "Your opponent is me," Long Haochen said with difficulty. "Oh," Kyr replied, as if she wasn't surprised by the result. Instead, she took the initiative to hold Long Haochen's hand. Han Q was also a little stunned. For the Knights Templars, this should be a good draw. However, looking at Long Haochen's expression, he couldn't help but feel uneasy. The draw has ended. Yang Wenjiao versus Mu Ning, Long Haochen versus Kyr. First match, Long Haochen versus Kyr. You 2 stay in the field and prepare for the match. The other deputy temple masters didn't have any objections, so Han Q announced the result of the draw. As soon as the result was announced, the resting area was instantly filled with chatter. Lin Xin even stood up nervously. "My brother is going to fight against Kyr. What should I do? Will they really go all out? Wait a minute." Kyr, who was holding Long Haochen's hand, suddenly spoke. The 6 deputy temple masters who were about to leave the field couldn't help but look at her in confusion. "Kyr said calmly, 'Let's move on to the next match. I surrender.'" Boom! The whole field was in an uproar. Han Q's eyes widened. Honestly speaking, he really didn't know who to hope for in the match between Long Haochen and Kyr. From the perspective of the Knights Templars, of course it would be best if Long Haochen won. That way, he would be able to meet Yang Wenjiao in the finals. However, if Long Haochen won against Kyr, would it affect their relationship? Kyr was the reincarnation saintess. If Long Haochen could unite with her through marriage, then without a doubt, the 2 of them would become the pillars of the alliance in the future. This was also the situation that the Knights Templars hoped to see the most. Kyr surrendering was an ending that Han Q never expected. However, after a brief daze, his face was filled with joy. Without a doubt, Kyr surrendering was the most desirable outcome for the Knights Templars. It was the best of both worlds. Ing Suifeng's expression was much worse. He hurriedly said, "Kyr, you really want to surrender?" Kyr nodded lightly. She pulled Long Haochen's hand and walked towards the resting area. "Kyr, Long Haochen was completely shocked by Kyr's words. He was already prepared to surrender, but he didn't expect Kyr to be even more direct than him. She didn't even wait for the match to start before surrendering. All of this happened too fast, to the point that he only reacted when Kyr pulled him back. "No, you can't do this. Kyr, you're stronger than me," Long Haochen said anxiously. Kyr held his hand tightly. She softly said, "Your glory is my glory." These simple words in Long Haochen's ears were like a heavy hammer pounding on his heart. A surge of hot blood rushed into his brain in an instant, causing him to be unable to speak. Kyr. Long Haochen's eyes were moist. He didn't stop Kyr's good intentions. Just like that, he let her hold his hand and slowly walked back to the resting area. As a man, Words couldn't compare to actions. I'll use my entire life to repay this favor. Kai, or I have you in this life. What more can I ask for? I will never let you down. I'll use my life to protect you. At this moment, Kai Er's position in Long Houchen's heart had suddenly risen to the same level as his parents'. Even if he didn't fully understand what the love between a man and a woman was, Kai had already occupied the entire place in his heart. Yang Wenjiao stood in the middle of the arena. He looked at Mu Ning, whose eyes were filled with disbelief. The expressions on both of their faces were quite interesting. Mu Ning had never thought that the queen in her heart would surrender just like that. From his point of view, Kai, I would definitely be the champion. But Yang Wenjiao had a feeling of relief. Kai had chosen to surrender. His opponent in the finals would naturally be Long Houchen. Not having to face that female assassin seemed to be a very wonderful thing. The second match of the semifinals, Yang Wenjiao against Mu Ning. Are you guys ready? Yang Wenjiao immediately sobered up and said in a deep voice, ready. On the other side, Mu Ning revealed a trace of a bitter smile. That attack from yesterday, his injuries were really too heavy. Until now, half of his body still couldn't exert any strength. Today's match, to him, was originally meaningless. I surrender. Another scene that caused the entire arena to be in an uproar appeared. Although Mu Ning's heart was extremely unwilling, other than surrendering, he really had no other choice. He didn't even have a chance to fight. With his current state, his cultivation base hadn't even reached the 5th rank. Perhaps he wouldn't even be able to withstand one move from Yang Wenjiao. So what if he didn't surrender? Such a dramatic scene. Even the referee was a little stunned. He couldn't help but look towards the direction of the rostrum. Yang Wenjiao wins. Both semifinals had actually ended before the fight even started. Knights Templars became the biggest winner. Long Houchen and Yang Wenjiao entered the top 2. Everyone don't move. There will be an announcement later. Han Q's voice came from the direction of the rostrum. The contestants who were originally preparing to leave the arena all stopped in their tracks. To them, it was a little disappointing. They originally thought that they could see a more exciting match, but there were 2 consecutive surrenders. After a while, Han Q's voice came again from the rostrum. Since there are no real matches today, after discussion by the Presidium of this year's competition, we have decided to bring forward the final. It will be done together today. We will also carry out the award ceremony and the roulette ceremony. No one is allowed to leave the arena. The final was brought forward. The roulette ceremony. This meant that the final champion would be decided today. At the same time, the final grouping of the 10 monster hunters would be completed. The monster hunters' preliminaries were originally held within the Temple League. Everything was simple, without any fancy gimmicks. Since the semifinals had ended in such a way, naturally they had to save time. Next, we will first proceed to the 3rd and 4th finals. Assassin Temple Kai and Mu Ning will enter the arena. This time, it was directly announced by Han Q. The referee in the arena was also changed. It was a man who looked to be in his 40s, with a body as sturdy as a mountain. Although he could restrain his aura, when he appeared in the center of the arena, he still brought a lot of pressure to the contestants. This referee was probably at least at the 8th rank, right? The young men and women in the resting area were all the best of the younger generation. They were more knowledgeable than their peers. They could immediately tell that this referee, whose aura was like a solid substance, was extraordinarily strong. I surrender. A cold voice resounded in the arena. The contestants who were originally discussing about the tiebreaker quieted down at the same time. Their gazes fell on the same spot. Kai stood there, slightly bowed towards the rostrum, and then sat down again. She was the one who shouted the 3 words just now. Kai, what are you doing? Long Houchen was shocked. However, Kai had already shouted the words to surrender. Kai lightly leaned her head on his shoulder. Dummy, the top 3 can't be in the same monster hunters. Long Houchen's whole body shook. That's right, the top 3 can't be in the same monster hunters. How could I actually forget such an important thing? She completely gave up the competition for me, and didn't even enter the top 3. She clearly has the ability to compete for the first place. Care. Long Houchen only felt the emotions in his heart burst out like a geyser. He couldn't help but open his arms to hug her. Right now, he already somewhat didn't know how to express the incomparable surging emotions in his heart. Kair used her hand to support his chest and said in a low voice, "Dummy, you still haven't gotten the first place. Quickly go. It's your turn." Long Houchen grabbed her hand, brought it to his mouth, and kissed it hard. "I will definitely win." After saying this, he directly jumped up and almost rushed into the training field. Kair still raised her hand, only to feel that her whole arm was a little numb, and her pretty face hidden behind the veil was blushing. But she felt that she had never been in such a good mood in her life. It turned out that sacrificing for a person could also bring such a feeling of happiness. "You said that you will protect me forever. How can I not create opportunities for you?" This dummy, as early as when Long Houchen made that promise to her. She had already expected this scene to happen. Rushing into the field, Long Houchen's fighting spirit instantly soared to unprecedented heights, and one could vaguely see that his pair of crystal clear eyes seemed to be burning with golden flames. This was the power of love. Right now, his state had entered an unprecedented peak. However, when the emotions in his heart ignited the monstrous fighting spirit, he forgot an important matter that he didn't explain to Kair. At this moment, the most unexpected one was the assassin who got the 3rd place because Kair gave up the competition. Mu Ning looked at Kair's direction dumbfoundedly and didn't know what to say for a moment. Sometimes happiness comes too fast and can't be digested at all. One must know that the top 3 means that one can get an incomparably precious spiritual stove and the opportunity to form a team with oneself as the leader. As one of the top 3, he will definitely become the leader of the Monster Hunters team. On the platform, Ing Suifeng was so angry that his nose was a little crooked, looking at Han Qiu with a face full of anger. Han Qiu very innocently said, "This has nothing to do with me. A grown-up girl can't be kept at home. However, you see, this is also a good thing. It will further promote the exchange between our 2 big temple. Moreover, in the future, Long Houchen is very likely to become the mainstay of our Knights Templars. Isn't he also the son-in-law of your assassin temple?" Although his mouth said this, the smile on his face was really very treacherous. The extremely sturdy judge in the middle of the field looked at Long Houchen with some doubt, and his eyes looked towards the platform. After a while, the voice of Han Qiu floated down from the platform. "The competition continues. Let the finals begin." After the judge slightly bowed towards the platform, he shouted loudly, "Long Houchen against Yang Wenjiao. Prepare for the match." This judge at this moment was also in a very good mood, because he was also a member of the Knights Templars, seeing both of his juniors enter the finals. Although Long Houchen had a certain amount of luck, this was also the glory of the Knights Templars. Yang Wenjiao walked into the field a lot later than Long Houchen, and after bowing to the judge, he turned to Long Houchen. The destined twin stars of the Knights Templars finally met again. And this time, it was the finals of the Monster Hunters trial. Yang Wenjiao looked at Long Houchen and could not help but be secretly shocked. He could clearly feel Long Houchen's monstrous fighting spirit at this moment. What's going on? Kai, admitted defeat twice in a row for him. Could it be that he didn't feel a bit awkward in his heart? After all, that was a victory given to him by a girl. How could he know that Long Houchen and Kai had a bet? Under Kai encouragement, his desire for victory had reached the extreme. Moreover, to Long Houchen, admittedly it was because Kai admitted defeat that he was able to enter the finals. But as long as he could defeat the popular champion Yang Wenjiao in the finals, he would be able to sufficiently prove his strength. Although it was the finals, the process was still very simple. The judge looked at both sides, confirmed that there was no mistake, and shouted, "The match begins. Be careful when you attack. Do not go all out." After warning, he slowly retreated, and the light barrier representing the start of the match appeared around the field. Following the referee's announcement, both sides released their spiritual energy at almost the same time. A golden light shot into the sky, and a strong fighting spirit burst out in an instant. Long Houchen's internal spiritual energy had been suppressed for a long time, and now that it was released, it looked even more dazzling than Yang Wenjiao. Yang Wenjiao did not show any weakness. Facing the pressure brought by Long Houchen, his aura quickly rose. The two of them looked at each other, and the strong fighting spirit continued to rise. They did not say anything. At this moment, in their hearts, there was only this battle in front of them, and they only had each other as opponents. Long Houchen separated his hands, and the Holy Spirit sword suddenly appeared in his left hand. In his right hand, a dark blue halo appeared, and then a golden light burst out from the blue light, as if it was shooting out rays of light. The blade of the sword popped out. Blue rain and hibiscus of light finally appeared in his hands for the first time, and he stepped onto the battlefield. He did not choose to use the effects of the Holy Spirit set, but chose to use blue rain and hibiscus of light. This meant that in this battle, Long Houchen had chosen to fight his opponent with offense and fight punishment with punishment. Yang Wenjiao also used the pair of golden swords. The two of them shouted at the same time and simultaneously charged towards each other. Neither of them summoned their mounts, because at this moment the distance between the two of them was only 20 meters. Both of them were knight, and the referee did not give the order to distance themselves. At this moment, with such a distance, it was very likely that the opponent would have the upper hand when they summoned their mounts. From the resting area, it could be clearly seen that two dazzling golden lights with an unparalleled aura were brazenly colliding with each other. That resolute aura, that dense and powerful saint energy, all of these displayed their powerful abilities to everyone. Boom! The two of them collided fiercely, and it was a head-on collision without any fancy moves. Then they turned into two balls of golden light and bounced backwards. This time Long Houchen, whose cultivation base was slightly lower, had the upper hand. He retreated 1 meter less than Yang Wenjiao. Yang Wenjiao was shocked. When he collided with Long Houchen, he could clearly feel the madness that was emanating from Long Houchen's body. That's right, it was madness. At this moment, Long Houchen was completely ignited, and he was simply displaying his combat strength beyond his usual level. Assault. Long Houchen used the advantage of the first attack to instantly turn around and launch an attack on Yang Wenjiao. He raised the Holy Spirit sword in his left hand above his head, and a holy sword was immediately condensed. Meanwhile, the blue rain and hibiscus of light in his right hand erupted with lightning thorns towards Yang Wenjiao. In that instant, Yang Wenjiao's vision blurred. He saw the strange heavy sword in Long Houchen's right hand erupt with thousands of rays of light, as though it had suddenly exploded. The brilliance of the light was at least 10 times that of an ordinary lightning thorns. A huge ball of light erupted with thousands of rays of light, completely sealing off all of Yang Wenjiao's paths of advance and retreat. The unparalleled sharpness of the light was so oppressive that Yang Wenjiao actually felt a little suffocated. How could there be such a powerful lightning thorns? Yang Wenjiao was shocked and did not dare to be negligent. The heavy sword in his hands instantly stuck close to his body to defend, and the rising formation activated. Golden light filled the air. Every ray of light that struck the rising formation's light barrier, which combined both offense and defense, brought about rings of golden light. It looked as though a torrential rain had descended, but was blocked by the rising formation. This was one of the special effects of blue rain and hibiscus of light. It could increase a skill's attack speed. The more compatible a skill was with this sword, the greater the increase in attack speed. After conducting a lot of experiments, Long Houchen discovered that lightning thorns had the highest compatibility with blue rain and hibiscus of light. Sure enough, when used at this moment, its full power erupted. How could a single rising formation withstand such a concentrated attack? In the blink of an eye, the rising heaven formation shattered. However, this 1 second bought Yang Wenjiao enough time to react. Accompanied by a resounding dragon's roar, Yang Wenjiao soared into the sky, propelled by the rising dragon strike. Although he had received over a dozen slashes, he relied on the rising dragon strike's offensive and defensive properties to neutralize the might of blue rain and hibiscus of light. Seeing Yang Wenjiao soar into the sky, Long Haochen leaped into the air and chased after the rising dragon strike. At the same time, he swung the holy sword he had just condensed in his right hand. Light severing sword. At this moment, Yang Wenjiao's valiant strength was displayed. The soaring, rising dragon strike actually forcefully turned around in midair, changing its upward trajectory to a downward strike, brazenly meeting Long Haochen's sacred sword. Rumble. Gold and white collided violently, causing a dense halo of gold and white to spread out in the air. Long Haochen was directly smashed to the ground by the impact, while Yang Wenjiao also revealed his true form and used the momentum to soar into the sky. One could faintly see a trace of blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. In the collision just now, he had actually suffered a slight injury. Long Haochen's attack was simply too fierce. Yang Wenjiao did not expect him to choose to attack without holding back at all, and in the end, he still suffered a small loss. Swinging both swords, Yang Wenjiao quickly outlined a series of strange patterns in front of him. He wanted to use the short period of time his body soared into the sky to summon his Starlight Unicorn. His Starlight Unicorn had already entered the 7th grade realm, although it had only broken through not long ago. Its level was higher than Long Haoyue's. In addition, the Starlight Unicorn was highly compatible with him, and it also had the ability to fly. He would definitely be able to turn the situation around. However, at this moment, something that Yang Wenjiao did not expect happened. An intense suction force suddenly came from below, and the powerful pulling force actually directly pulled him back to the ground. At this moment, Long Haochen, who had just landed, did not give himself the slightest time to breathe. After touching the ground, he immediately bounced up, unfolded both swords, and spiraled towards Yang Wenjiao. The Saint Spiritual Stove's 2nd evolution skill, drawing battle-killing revolving sword. Although Long Haochen's emotions were currently in a highly excited state, and his fighting spirit had already been ignited to the extreme, but the more it was in this kind of situation, the clearer and calmer his mind became. It was the complete opposite of his own explosive attack. In the split second when Yang Wenjiao collided with him in midair, Long Haochen judged what his opponent was going to do. The Saint's Spiritual Stove burst out in the nick of time, enveloped in a white light, and forcibly pulled Yang Wenjiao's body down. Long Haochen himself went up to meet him from below. In this kind of situation, Yang Wenjiao did not even have the opportunity to dodge, and could only choose to meet him head-on. Moreover, his summoning would inevitably be interrupted. As it turned out, Long Haochen was successful. When Yang Wenjiao felt that enormous suction force, his body's balance was affected, and his summoning was already broken. Immediately after, he saw the battle-killing revolving sword rise up with a glaring golden halo. Not good. At this critical juncture, how could Yang Wenjiao dare to have the slightest bit of reservation? Dozens of starry blue specks of light shot out from his chest, turning into balls of light that bombarded Long Haochen. It was his Starry Sea spiritual stove. In his current, unprepared state, facing Long Haochen's battle-killing revolving sword after his cultivation had risen to the 5th step, he was afraid that he would directly suffer heavy injuries. One step lost the initiative, and every step was filled with trepidation. Long Haochen's imposing manner had already occupied the absolute upper hand. The violent collision sound was accompanied by countless rays of light exploding in the air, just like the release of fireworks. For a moment, all the participants in the resting area were dazzled. Among them, the majority were already unable to clearly see what was happening in the field. They could only vaguely see that both sides seemed to have erupted with the power of spiritual stoves. These two people actually both possessed spiritual stoves? Without a doubt, Yang Wenjiao's Starry Sea spiritual stove was clearly more powerful. However, these participants paid more attention to Long Haochen. That was clearly a saint's spiritual stove. For a monster hunter, being able to possess a knight with a saint's spiritual stove meant that they possessed a cornerstone. When facing a powerful enemy, such a monster hunter's chances of survival would certainly be greatly increased. If they were to choose, at least more than 80% of them would choose to be in the same group as Long Haochen. The other 20% would be because they themselves were a knight or because of some other strange reason. Chapter 45. By now, many people had already forgotten that Kai, or had given way to Yang Wenjiao. Both Long Haochen and Yang Wenjiao had displayed abilities that surpassed most of the contestants present. Moreover, they had not been able to summon their mounts since the start of the battle. Golden, white, and blue halos continued to explode in the air. Finally, two figures fell from the sky and landed on the ground. There were at least 6 dents on Long Haochen's Holy Spirit armor. They were clearly caused by the Star Sea spiritual stove's attack, but it did not break through his defense. On the other side, Yang Wenjiao appeared to be in an even more sorry state. He wore a set of golden armor today, and there were at least a dozen sword marks on the armor. His left shoulder, in particular, had clearly been slashed open, and blood was gushing out of it. Long Haochen spat out a mouthful of blood with a cry. His injuries were no less severe than Yang Wenjiao's. The power of the Star Sea spiritual stove had helped Yang Wenjiao turn the tables. However, as he spat out blood, he launched another attack on Yang Wenjiao. This fella is simply a lunatic. Doesn't he need to catch his breath? Yang Wenjiao could not help but feel helpless when he saw Long Haochen charging at him again. Long Haochen's eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight, but there was a clear sense of calmness in the depths of his eyes. The two auras were perfectly combined. What kind of terrifying existence was this? In fact, Yang Wenjiao did not know that Long Haochen's constitution as the Holy Sun had gradually integrated into his battle due to the stimulation of the outside world. The constitution of the Holy Sun gave him the ability of the luminous heart. Under the effect of the luminous heart, his judgment would not be affected by his emotions in any situation. As the knight's most powerful innate talent, the Holy Sun was being developed bit by Long Haochen. Yang Wenjiao gritted his teeth and did not choose to fight Long Haochen head-on. This fellow was crazy. If he continued to fight, it would likely end in a lose-lose situation. Moreover, he might even end up as the loser if he lost in terms of aura. Therefore, Yang Wenjiao tried to calm himself down and chose to retreat strategically. At the same time, he wielded his sword and quickly drew a summoning formation. As long as he could summon the Starlight Unicorn, he would have a higher chance of winning the battle. Yang Wenjiao naturally didn't retreat. If he did, he wouldn't be able to dodge Long Haochen's sudden attack. He also chose to attack, but in a different direction. He quickly rushed to the side and activated the summoning circle at the same time. He dashed to the side and activated the summoning formation at the same time. At the same time, blue starlight seemed to flow out from his chest and quickly spread to his entire body, fusing with his armor. It was the evolved ability of the Galaxy Spiritual Furnace, Star Spirit Armor. With this kind of defense, Yang Wenjiao was confident that he wouldn't receive too much damage from Long Haochen's ranged attacks. However, at this moment, there was a commotion in the resting area. Unfortunately, Yang Wenjiao could not hear the commotion. The light barrier around the training field not only blocked the various skills inside, but it also blocked all disturbances from the outside world. The contestants in the resting area only saw a purple light flash, and a gigantic creature appeared under Long Haochen. It had 3 big heads. It was Haoyue, He did not use any summoning incantations or runes to complete the summoning. How was that possible? The ones who felt the most incredulous were the summoners of the Soul Temple. However, no matter what they guessed, Long Houchin completed the summoning in an instant. The moment Haiyue appeared, 3 spells were cast almost at the same time. A ball of dense green light instantly fell on Long Houchin's body, causing his entire body to be covered with a layer of misty green luster. A ball of terrifying red light was spat out from Xiaohua's mouth. A golden light shone on the blue rain and hibiscus of light in Long Houchin's right hand. The 3 skills were cast at the same time in one go. Haiyue's position was slightly in front of Long Houchin, so when Long Houchin landed, he happened to land on its tail. Hence, when Xiaohua and Xiaohua released their skills, Haiyue's 4-meter-long body twisted its waist and swung its tail, throwing Long Houchin out in an instant. It changed the direction of his attack and went straight for Yang Wenjiao. A huge fireball with a diameter of 1 meter flew in front of Long Houchin, completely blocking his body. This was the red light that Xiaohua had spat out. Super Bursting Fireball, a level 5 fire spell. It was a single target spell, but once it exploded, it could even cause the power of an AoE spell. It was one of the few tier 5 fire-type spells with the strongest attack power. Yang Wenjiao was in the middle of summoning when he suddenly felt a burning sensation behind him. Why was there a burning sensation? His summoning rune was about to be completed. If he was interrupted at this time, it was very likely that he would fall into an even more passive situation. Hence, Yang Wenjiao gritted his teeth. The armor on his body shone brightly, and a layer of golden red flames instantly erupted. It was actually the sun's fire. However, this was not the sun's fire that he released himself, but the armor that released it, and it could only last for 3 seconds. His armor was actually also a piece of spirit-grade equipment. Boom! The super bursting fireball ruthlessly bombarded Yang Wenjiao. This was a level 5 spell. How could it be blocked by the skill attached to a piece of equipment? The sun's fire was instantly shattered, and the powerful explosive force further affected the surface of the star spirit armor, causing a large crack to explode. However, at this moment, Yang Wenjiao's heart relaxed. In the end, he still managed to block this attack, and his rune was also completed in this instant. The rich golden hexagonal radiance was already shining in front of him. As long as he stepped onto the Starlight Unicorn, the match would start anew. However, it was also at this instant that an unprecedented sense of danger made Yang Wenjiao's hair stand on end. He had no time to make any judgments. He turned around with all his might and slashed both swords backward. Puff! 2 intersecting white lights formed a cross-slash and brazenly bombarded Yang Wenjiao's swords. An ear-piercing sound of metal breaking rang out in the air. Yang Wenjiao's dual swords were actually broken, just like that. The white light slashed fiercely onto his body, tearing apart the astral spirit armor and the armor on his body. The terrifying attack power directly sent Yang Wenjiao flying. As blood wildly sprayed out, Yang Wenjiao only had one thought at this moment. How is this possible? The white light flashed, and the suction force instantly pulled the heavily injured Yang Wenjiao backward. Neigh. With a long neigh, the Starlight Unicorn finally made its appearance. Through the connection of the equality contract, it immediately sensed that Yang Wenjiao was in danger. It spread its wings and chased after Yang Wenjiao without hesitation. However, it was also at this moment that another white light shone. This time, it was acting on the Starlight Unicorn's body. It was originally chasing after Yang Wenjiao, but it had no choice but to suddenly turn around and go in Long Houchin's direction. Long Houchin forcefully blocked the Starlight Unicorn's attack by crossing his swords. Although he was knocked more than 10 meters away, the Starlight Unicorn was also forced to take a few steps back due to the recoil, preventing it from continuing its attack. Stop! I don't want to hurt him. Long Houchin shouted at the Starlight Unicorn. The Starlight Unicorn was very obedient. It immediately stopped its attack, and its beautiful big eyes were filled with anxiety. It was no wonder it did not dare to attack again. It was indeed afraid of hurting him. On the other side, Yang Wenjiao was currently in front of Hao Yue. Little Green bit Yang Wenjiao's neck without any hesitation, and he did not dare to move at all. However, blood was still flowing out of his mouth and nose. It was clear that he had suffered a serious injury. The entire place was silent. At this point in the competition, the outcome was already decided. Before today's semifinals began, the other contestants also had their own thoughts on the final rankings of this year's competition. In their opinion, the most likely candidate to win the championship was Kai Er from the Assassin Temple. The strength Kai Er displayed was too overbearing. In front of her, there was simply no one who could last more than a quarter of an hour. Moreover, no one had ever forced her to use her true strength. The more mysterious she was, the more powerful she was. That was the view that everyone agreed with. After Kai Er, the most likely candidate to win the championship was Yang Wenjiao. He had the Starlight Unicorn and was a powerful rank 5 punishment knight. With his powerful cultivation base, equipment, and the support of the Starlight Unicorn, he should be able to put up a fight against Kai Er. It was hard to say who would emerge victorious in the end. As for Long Houchin, he was ranked 3rd. To many people, as a knight, Long Houchin was still too young, although he should have a good talent. But compared to the Starlight Unicorn, his strange mount was still a distance away. His cultivation base should not be as good as Yang Wenjiao. If it was not for his relationship with Kai Er, he would not have received as much attention as the other two. As for Mu Ning, no one thought that he could enter the top 3. But after the start of the competition, everything that happened overturned everyone's opinion. Kai Er directly gave up the competition. She, who was the most favored by everyone, actually became the 4th place, while Mu Ning was lucky enough to pick up the 3rd place. But in the battle between Long Houchin and Yang Wenjiao, the majority still favored Yang Wenjiao. It was because the Starlight Unicorn was too dazzling. In the competition, Yang Wenjiao also proved his powerful strength. Not only did he have an astral sea, spiritual stove that could attack and defend, but he had also completed the first evolution of the spiritual stove. However, although the future Monster Hunters members who participated in the competition guessed Yang Wenjiao's strength, they did not guess the final result. Even at this time, in their eyes, Long Houchin's overall strength should be inferior to Yang Wenjiao's. However, the final result was a complete victory belonging to Long Houchin. From the beginning to the end, he completely suppressed Yang Wenjiao, not giving Yang Wenjiao any chance to fight back. He succeeded in the battle and obtained the final victory. Back to a few breaths ago, Yang Wenjiao's plan in the battle could not be said to be wrong, but his biggest mistake was his judgment of Hao Yue. The relationship between Long Houchin and Hao Yue was a blood contract. This was a feeling of complete blood connection. Even if they were in different planes, they could still maintain contact. When they felt danger from each other, they could even teleport to each other's side at the first moment. Under such circumstances, Long Houchin did not need any summoning spells or runes at all. He could easily complete the summoning of Hao Yue. Moreover, he could even use the telepathic link to inform Hao Yue in advance to prepare a skill. This was also why Hao Yue immediately released 3 spells as soon as he appeared. It was also these 3 skills that allowed Long Houchin to defeat Yang Wenjiao with 1 hit before the Starlight Unicorn appeared. The first spell was Xiaoqing's levitation spell, which instantly made Long Houchin lose a lot of weight. One must know that although Long Houchin was only 14 years old and did not weigh much, his armor and 2 heavy swords were not light at all. The weight reduction made Hao Yue's tail the most advantageous propeller for him. His speed soared, and he caught up with Yang Wenjiao, who was in the midst of an assault. The second spell was Xiao Hue's super explosive fireball. It was precisely this toy that blasted away more than half of Yang Wenjiao's defense, and even caused cracks to appear on the starlight armor. The third spell from Xiaohua was a buff light magic. It was somewhat similar to Brilliant World, but also somewhat different. It was a one-time injection of a highly concentrated light element to Long Haochen. Because of the blood contract between Long Haochen and Haoyue, they were connected by blood. This allowed him to directly mobilize this light element for his own use, and in the blink of an eye, transformed into two sacred swords. The two sacred swords suddenly erupted with a cross slash, becoming the ultimate attack to end Yang Wenjiao. This was still Long Haochen being lenient and not displaying the full power of the sacred swords. Otherwise, Yang Wenjiao's body would have already been split into 4 pieces. After thoroughly defeating Yang Wenjiao, the rest was simple. The Saint Spiritual Stove's traction ability was activated once again, and the defenseless Yang Wenjiao was thrown to Haoyue. In a situation where Yang Wenjiao's life was in danger, no matter how powerful the Starlight Unicorn was, it would not be able to reverse the situation. Yang Wenjiao's judgment was correct. The Starlight Unicorn's strength was indeed greater than Haoyue's, and its buff in the light element was also something Haoyue could not compare to. However, he had miscalculated the compatibility between the partners. How could the blood contract between Long Haochen and Haoyue be compared to the equality contract between him and the Starlight Unicorn? If both sides were to enter a fighting stance and summon their respective magical beast companions to fight, the final result would be a lose-lose situation. As a Sky Knight, Yang Wenjiao's chances of victory were a bit higher. However, with Haoyue's assistance of 3 attributes, Long Haochen was not without a chance. Unfortunately, the outcome of a battle could not be measured by absolute strength. Many changes could occur during the course of a battle. Among them, the most likely to cause changes were tactics. Long Haochen wins, the referee announced. In the next moment, he was already in front of Yang Wenjiao. At Long Haochen's signal, Little Green opened its mouth and handed Yang Wenjiao to the referee. Rays of white holy light shone and landed on Yang Wenjiao's body, healing his rather serious injuries. Apart from the referee, the Starlight Unicorn also released some. At this moment, it had already quickly run to Yang Wenjiao's side, occasionally glancing at Haoyue not far away with obvious hostility. Long Haochen also released the holy light barrier from his spiritual light bracers. At the same time, the blue rain and hibiscus of light in his hands emitted a faint blue light. This was the water rain spell. Both light and water magic had healing effects. Light magic stimulated one's potential to heal oneself, while water magic soothed wounds and fused vitality. If the two were used together, they would complement each other and have an additional effect on healing. In this battle, it seemed that Long Haochen had completely suppressed Yang Wenjiao, but in reality he was also under great pressure. From the beginning to the end, his attacks never stopped. Otherwise, with Yang Wenjiao's cultivation, how could he not summon the Starlight Unicorn in time? Under such a combination, he was under great pressure. At this time, an advantage that others could not see was revealed, and that was Long Haochen's external spiritual power. In terms of internal spiritual power, Long Haochen was a level 1 Earth Knight, and was definitely inferior to Yang Wenjiao, who was a level 3 Sky Knight. However, his external spiritual power was not something that Yang Wenjiao could compare with. Haoyue's 2 evolutions had caused Long Haochen's external spiritual power to increase along with the changes in his bloodline. Moreover, the mysterious heavy sword, blue rain and hibiscus of light, was constantly nourishing his body. Yang Wenjiao's external spiritual power was most likely only slightly more than 200, definitely not 300, while Long Haochen's external spiritual power was most likely more than 400. It was just that he did not know how much external spiritual power he had without going through specialized magic equipment to test it. The strength of external spiritual power made Long Haochen's endurance far exceed Yang Wenjiao's. Although he was injured after continuously forcefully using skills, it was still within the range of his endurance. Looking at the hazy light of blue rain and hibiscus of light in his hands, Long Houchin thought that if the holy sword cross-slash was still unable to defeat him, perhaps he would really have to use the strongest skill that came with this sword. However, if that happened, it would probably cause irreparable damage to him. A huge white pillar of light enveloped Yang Wenjiao's body, and the well-built referee used a skill to announce his strength. Holy Healing, the 8th grade skill of the Guardian Knight. The referee for the finals was impressively an 8th grade Holy Knight. Under the effects of the Holy Healing, the huge wound on Yang Wenjiao's back healed at an alarming rate, and he slowly stood up with the referee's help. Looking at Long Houchin, Yang Wenjiao's eyes revealed a complicated light. He did not expect that he would actually lose. He lost to this youth who was obviously much younger than him. The first time he met him, he was still a 4th grade Great Knight. At that time, although his performance was stunning, he did not stand a chance in front of him. However, in less than a month, he defeated him head-on. A loss was a loss, and Yang Wenjiao would not find any excuses for himself. If he was facing demons, he would already be a corpse. Taking a deep breath, Yang Wenjiao nodded to the referee beside him, indicating that he could control his body. Only then did the Holy Knight let go of his hand. Step by step, Yang Wenjiao slowly walked towards Long Houchin. His face was very pale, but the complicated look in his eyes gradually disappeared. He has something to say to me? Long Houchin looked at the staggering Yang Wenjiao and walked up to him. You won, Yang Wenjiao said weakly. It was a trick. At this moment, the rising battle intent in Long Houchin's golden eyes had quietly disappeared. His handsome face still carried a bit of the childishness and purity of a young man. There was a slightly bashful but sunny smile on his face. Looking at his face, Yang Wenjiao was slightly dazed. It was this youth who defeated him. A win is a win. In the near future, when we compete for the Mithril Foundation, I will definitely not lose to you. Saying so, Yang Wenjiao extended his right hand to Long Houchin. Long Houchin extended his right hand and shook his hand. You seem to have forgotten that the team competition is about to start. A bitter smile appeared on Yang Wenjiao's face, and he gently shook his head. We will continue to move forward for the glory of the night. Yang Wenjiao's hand was swordless, and his right fist lightly hit the left side of his chest. For the glory of the night. Long Houchin returned the salute. In the direction of the VIP platform, the top management of the 6 temples filed down, walked into the trial field, and came to their side. Han Q's voice once again resounded in the arena. The individual competition of this year's Monster Hunters preliminaries has ended. Champion, Long Houchin. Runner-up, Yang Wenjiao. 3rd place, Mu Ning. Next, we will hold the roulette team competition. All the top 60 contestants of this year's competition, please enter the arena. After almost a month, the individual competition of the Monster Hunters preliminaries had finally ended. The final result was beyond everyone's expectations. Knights Templars took the first 2 places and became the biggest winner. Long Houchin, on the other hand, became famous after one battle. He won the final championship at the age of only 14 and became the youngest individual champion in the history of the Monster Hunters preliminaries. However, in his heart, this championship did not belong to him, but to the girl who silently supported him, but could not look at him. Under the guidance of the staff, all the contestants slowly entered the arena. On the other side, dozens of staff pushed a huge platform with a large number of rollers into the arena. The platform was circular, about 20 meters in diameter, and there was a huge roulette on it. The contestants stood in 2 rows under the guidance of the staff. Among them, the remaining contestants who made it to the top 16 stood in the first row, and the rest stood behind. Long Houchin and Yang Wenjiao stood side by side, staring at the huge roulette in front of them. Suddenly, Long Houchin seemed to have thought of something, and his expression changed. He quickly turned around and looked for Kai in the crowd. Just as he was about to walk towards Kai and tell her something important, Han Q's voice was heard again. Long Houchin, Yang Wenjiao Muning, get on the stage. At the same time, a soft light shield was released from the round platform, covering Long Houchin and the other two, as well as the platform with the roulette. Han Q said in a deep voice, as the top 3 of this competition, you will have the priority to form your own team. However, everything must be done according to the rules. From now on, you are not allowed to make any form of contact with others from the outside world until the team is formed. Long Houchin was anxious, and he quickly said, Holy Night Elder, can I have a word with a friend of mine? Just a word. Spirit Emperor Sanchue from the Soul Temple's face sank, and he said, Didn't you hear what Holy Night Elder said? This is the rule of the Sanctuary Alliance. How can it be changed because of you? The leaders of the other temple were a little depressed that the Knights Templars had won the first 2 places. At this time, they were on the side of the rules, and naturally, they would not make an exception for Long Houchin. Long Houchin turned his head to look at Kai again. He wanted to tell her something with his eyes, but Kai could not see it. Even if his eyes could express many things, what was the use? Under the urging of the staff, Long Houchin had to go up the round platform with Yang Wenjiao and Muning. Han Q looked at Long Houchin with some doubts, but at this time as the host he could not say much. According to the procedure, he said in a deep voice, the 3 of you have won the final top 3, so each of you has a chance to directly choose a future partner of yours in the Monster Hunters. As long as the partner agrees, he can directly become a member of the Monster Hunters. Long Houchin, you are first, so we will start with you. The light shield emitted from the center of the platform isolated the sound from the outside world, but the sound inside could be heard. But Long Houchin did not know this. Otherwise, even if he had to shout, he would definitely shout out the most important thing in his heart. Long Houchin looked at Han Q in a daze, and his face became even paler than before. He looked at Han Q, and then looked at Kai, who was standing in the middle of the first row outside. His body even started to sway slightly. No matter if it was the 6 deputy temple masters or Yang Wenjiao and Muning who were standing beside him, they could not help but be confused. Why was he hesitating? Did he have any other choice other than that lady? But how was that possible? Anyone with a discerning eye would be able to tell. That lady had given up 2 matches consecutively because of him. Otherwise, the ranking would not have been like this today. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Long Houchin. But to him, everything happened too fast, so fast that he did not even have the time to tell his thoughts to Kai. Outside the light shield, Kai stood there quietly. She was also a little sluggish. Didn't I already give him a choice? Why didn't he say anything? What was he waiting for? Lin Xan stood behind Kai, and Lin Xan stood not far away. At this moment, all of them suddenly became nervous. Lin Xan knew Long Houchin too well. Although he was young, he had many qualities that adults could not have. Humility, honesty, compassion, bravery, fairness, sacrifice, honor, persistence, benevolence, justice. Almost all of the 10 rules of a knight could be seen in him. He would not really choose that guy who did not know magic, right? If that was really the case, what would happen to Kai? Little brother, just be a bad guy for once. Looking at the frail figure in front of her, Lin Xan prayed in her heart, her palms unknowingly filled with sweat. At this moment, Lin Xan was also feeling very complicated. He had been watching the competition for the past few days. Back then, when he placed his bet on Long Houchin, he imagined that after 5 years, he would be able to realize his dream. However, he never expected that in this competition, Long Houchin would defeat all the heroes and become the final champion. He naturally knew that Kai had given up 2 matches, and he could also see the close relationship between them. At this time, would Long Houchin still choose him? If it were him, what would he choose? Lin Xan did not know, He could not give himself an answer. At this moment, his mind was a little blank. Looking at Long Houchin in the distant arena, his heart was momentarily filled with mixed feelings. On one side, it was his dearest girlfriend, who was second to none in the Assassin Temple, the number one of the younger generation. She was called the Assassin Queen by the other assassins who came to participate in the competition, Kerr. On the other side, it was Lin Xian, who did not know any offensive magic and had barely made it through the preliminaries by relying on luck and schemes. On one side, it was the girl who he had promised to protect for his life, the girl who was willing to give up all her glory for him. On the other side, it was a promise driven by benefits. Lin Xian asked himself, how would he choose at this time? On the arena, Ing Suifeng was a little angry. He was very dissatisfied with Kai Er's choice today. Although this girl was not someone he could control, she represented the glory of the Assassin Temple. For a youth, she gave up her glory. If it was someone else, Ing Suifeng would definitely punish them severely. However, Kai Er had sacrificed so much for him, yet he was actually hesitating at this moment. Was he still a responsible man? What are you waiting for? Hurry up and make your choice. Ing Suifeng's anger contained a bit of coldness, and he could not help but shout in a low voice. Long Houchin's heart shook, and he woke up from his state of mind. He had to face reality. At this time, he could not afford to have any buffer. He clenched his fists, raised his head, and said in a deep voice with almost all the strength in his body, I choose the Magic Temple's Lin Xian. What? Boom! There was a cry of surprise on the arena, and a huge uproar below the arena. There were 3 people who cried out at the same time. The Knights Templar's Holy Knight Captain Han Qiu, the Assassin Temple's Hidden Chivalry Hall Master Ing Suifeng, and the Magic Temple's Mage Squad Leader Lin Chen. The other 3 Deputy Temple Masters were also surprised, but they were still able to control their emotions. What did you say? Ing Suifeng took a step forward and grabbed Long Houchin's Holy Spirit armor. An extremely terrifying and powerful pressure almost wreaked havoc on Long Houchin. Han Qiu hurriedly took a step forward and grabbed Ing Suifeng's shoulder. Don't be impulsive. Long Houchin, did you say something wrong? What's going on? The sacred magus Lin Chen looked on anxiously from the side. He had never thought that the future hope of the Knights Templars, the champion of this year's competition, would actually choose his own grandson. A trace of bitterness flashed in Long Houchin's eyes. I didn't say anything wrong. I chose the Magic Temple's Lin Xian. He is also in the top 60 of this year's competition. When Long Houchin said he chose Lin Xian for the first time, Kai Er, who was originally standing calmly below, suddenly froze. Her expression instantly became sluggish, and her grip on the green bamboo staff tightened. In that instant, she felt her mind go blank, as if she had suddenly lost all of her senses. Did I hear wrong? In that blank world, Kai Er tried to ask herself. However, how could I have misheard his voice? My hearing is at least twice that of a normal person. He chose Lin Xian. That Lin Xian who doesn't know any offensive magic. That Lin Xian who is in the same group as me in the group stage. Why, these 3 simple words flowed out of Kai Er's heart with great difficulty. What about his promise? He said he would protect me for the rest of his life. But he didn't choose me. Why? So cold. I suddenly feel so cold, so painful. Where did this cold and painful feeling come from? It seems to be my heart. My heart hurts because of him. In front of my eyes, there was originally only black, but now it has turned gray. Why? Kai Er, listen to me. There's a reason why Long Houchin chose Lin Xian. Listen to me explain. Lin Xian called out to Kai Er anxiously. But at this moment, Kai Er seemed to have lost her soul. She was still standing there silently, but it seemed like she had abandoned everything in the outside world. At this moment, Long Houchin's second sentence came from the light shield. I'm not wrong. I chose Lin Xan from the Magic Temple. He is also in the top 60 of this competition. Hearing his voice again, Kai seemed to have woken up, but in the next moment, a shocking chill instantly exploded from her body. Lin Xan, who was the closest to her, felt that the extreme coldness seemed to be tearing her soul apart, and her body uncontrollably fell back. Not only her, the other contestants around Kai are also quickly retreated in all directions. Uffed! The green bamboo stick in Kai. Er's hand sank into the ground, all the way to the end. Wah! She spat out a mouthful of blood. Her body slowly softened and fell. Kai! A slender figure suddenly appeared, as if he had cut open the space. Hugging her limp body, he reached out and hugged her. It was the skinny old man who was in front of the Sanctuary Alliance's treasure pavilion. B** starred. I'll kill you. A terrifying black halo instantly soared into the sky. An extremely powerful might cause the light in the entire training field to dim a little. The shocking murderous intent made the surrounding elites from the 6 great temples fall back with pale faces. The extremely sharp black saber gleam was about to land on the light shield released by the platform. At this moment, a golden light pillar suddenly fell from the sky. The golden light pillar was more than 30 meters in diameter, and when the black saber gleam cut into the golden light pillar, it turned into black light and disappeared without a sound. Yang Haohen, if you dare to stop me, I'll kill you first. The skinny old man's beard and hair stood up in anger. An extremely sharp murderous intent condensed behind him. A huge saber that was 10 meters long and 3 meters wide was condensed behind him. The sharp saber gleam caused the golden light pillar that fell from the sky to ripple. At this moment, within the golden light pillar, a huge throne that was almost as tall as the dome appeared in the golden light pillar, and it was bloated. Countless gemstones were embedded on the high back of the throne, forming the shape of a dazzling shield. In the middle of the back of the throne, the thick and mellow aura made it emitted a mountain-like deterrence and protection power. The skinny old man's powerful murderous intent could not move an inch forward.